I had no idea dogs need cognitive toys.
Oh boy.
Cognitive?
You might want to turn that down. Oh, what do I need to do? Post. Good. One. Oh, that's the wrong thing to do.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
And young enough to do.
well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
But it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view? Well, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Cause it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
And it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you'll cast your vote for Kennedy and a change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Welcome, welcome, welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of Lehigh Valley. Maybe I should put these on the right way so I can hear what I'm doing. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, at least so far, still currently kind of for now, maybe. Western Hemisphere, North American continent. On this planet Earth, the only one we have, third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect for the 16th of March 2025. Did a lot better there than I normally do when I literally have to pause 5-10 seconds and try to remember what year we're in. And at least today I remembered the bloody date because being an Irishman myself, you would think I would know that tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day. I will be celebrating uproariously by working 10 hours tomorrow. What? Yes, that's what I'll be doing tomorrow. So hopefully all of you who chose to celebrate this weekend did so, and did so wisely, safely, calmly, no bodily harm, no law enforcement interactions, etc., etc., and no driving, for God's sake, and no driving. I hope you were all smart and safe in your celebrations. It is it's the Irish American national holiday. We tend to make more of St. Patrick's Day than even the Irish do in the Republic itself. But that said, it's an Irish American holiday. Let's put it that way. Irish American national holiday, so to speak. Anyway, let's get through the business end of the program, shall we? You are watching and listening to the Kennedy Effect live for the 16th of March 2025. We are live right now on the Facebook pages of Our Revolution Pennsylvania, Ghost Claw Productions, the TCP Media Group, and Hot101.net. We are also, of course, live on our home group Facebook page for all things that surround our program, That Other Side of Information, live right there. In addition to that, about 100 other groups and pages and so on throughout the Facebook universe. And if you are one of those groups, individuals, etc., that allows us to be part of your corner of the Facebook universe, then thank you very, very, very much. We could not do it without you. You can watch, you can stay in the group that you're in, continue to watch, or you can come over to That Other Side of Information or Ghost Claw, and I will see your comments, questions, etc., or stay right where you are. We are deeply, deeply appreciative to everyone across the Facebook universe who shares our program or takes in the visuals of what is very much a radio program. This is a face made for radio, folks. We're live, of course, right now on two YouTube. Try that again. We are live on two YouTube channels because, gosh darn it, one's not enough. We are live right now on the YouTube channel of Ghost Claw Productions Radio, of course, as well as our own YouTube, That Other Side of Information, same name as our Facebook group. We strongly, deeply encourage you, invite you, and so on to subscribe, like, share, follow, all that fun stuff to all of the social media for both us here at the Kennedy Effect and TKE Tonight, as well as Ghost Claw Productions Radio and Hot101.net. Speaking of which, the audio of the program blasting around the globe via two global internet radio stations. Hot101.net, one of the very first global internet radio stations. Hot101.net, our name is our web address. You can listen to us on any type of device that can connect to the internet below, on, or above Earth. You can Bluetooth us into speakers, headphones, earbuds, in the shower, because God knows we all sing better in the shower, in the car, and you can do all of it 100% for free. Hot101.net does not require a login, retina scan, credit card, fingerprint, imprint, none of it, blood sample, sign over your, take out a second mortgage, none of that stuff. It's all 100% free. Hot101.net. And by the way, of course, don't forget to tell Alexa to play Hot101.net. GCPR Live is my half-owned radio station, along with Thomas. GCPR.live, GCPR.live, Ghost Claw Productions Radio.live. Go to our website and you can do the same thing. Listen 100% for free. But also at the website, you can find out everything you ever wanted to know about our station and more. Bios for all the hosts, show descriptions, schedule, merchandise, the shop is open, leave comments, questions, all of it right at our website, gcpr.live. We also have a fully functional Android app with an Apple app on the way. gcpr.live. Programming notes. Following us on hot101.net, the music will return. Following us on GCPR.live, it's Sunday. That means The Villain's View from 9 p.m. Conversations with T. Nathan from 11. And Thomas kicks off your broadcast work week tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. with the sound of coffee. Here at TKE Tonight in the Kennedy Effect, we return to you Tuesday evening from 8 p.m. That's the plan. The program, of course, brought to you by Smooth California. SmoothCA.online. Create a healthy skin lifestyle. Smooth California is a family-owned skincare formula whose main purpose is to promote a healthy skincare lifestyle. Smooth. See me turning here? It's because I'm reading. I'm not giving away any secrets here. I'm reading. You think I have all this memorized? I didn't know what year it was. It took me a couple extra minutes to figure that out, so I'm reading all of this. Of course, Smooth California is a healthy alternative to commercial products filled with chemicals and man-made additives that not only do damage to your skin, but to your entire body as well. Smooth California products are tallow-based and made with 100% natural ingredients without preservatives. Wow. Or additives. We strive to make sure your skin stays healthy and smooth. I am blurring so many words. This is water, I promise. I swear it's water. But I am blurring so many words tonight. I'm not sure what the hell's going on. It's been, you all know I battle health, something really awful. So I am smearing a bunch of words all over the place today. Not sure what's up with that. Anyway, let's get into the heart of the program, shall we? You recognize our guest. I think she is a 3 or 4-time winner, or loser, depending on how you want to look at it, because she keeps coming back, is Liz Mikitarian, founder of Stop Moms for Liberty, the National Stop Moms for Liberty. We are lucky enough here in the Lehigh Valley to have, I believe, I think we have the national group that, of course, we could access if we wanted to. There was a Stop Moms Pennsylvania. There's a Stop Moms Monroe County, Lehigh County, Northampton County, and then Lehigh Carbon might be one together.
Right.
I think
there are 22 subgroups just in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So in addition to catching up on whatever it is, and I must plead guilt that I have not kept up with the moms, it would seem to me that they have been much more quiet recently. But I would have to think also that, knowing the right wing, they are working in the background, so to speak, on the Project 2025 written, explained, promised destruction, decommissioning, breakdown, shuttering, whatever you want to call it. Insert proper term here, although I happen to think all of the above is probably accurate, of the Department of Education. So we'll be catching up with Liz about what Stop Moms is doing, what the moms are doing, and what it's going to mean to you when. I'm not leaning in the if category anymore. I'm in the when category.
Yeah.
The Department of Education is shuttered. Now, here's the big part of this that I think most people are missing. And that's not an insult at any of you. Here's what I think we might be missing. I think a lot of parents across the country, not all, look, you get 10 Americans in a room, we're barely going to be able to agree if the grass is green. 330 million people, we're not going to agree. And that's fine, by the way. Debate's good. Discussion is good. We learn from each other when we talk to each other. I used to be in the if category. I am no longer in the if category. I'm in the when category. And I do think that a large number of folks across the country are thinking to themselves, well, there's no way they can shut down the Department of Education. Yeah, they can. And they already are. And I think some of those very same people, if not all or most, are thinking, well, they'll just take the money that they were spending at the department and give it to the states to spend. That's not the plan, folks.
No, it's not.
It's not the plan. The plan is to take the money and put it in the billionaires' pockets. It's to close the Department of Education and everything it does, including all of its spending. Now, on Thursday, I told you, because I had some quick, well, I shouldn't say quick thumbs, I have fat thumbs, to be honest, but we looked it up live on the air. The Federal Department of Education passed through just shy of $270 billion in fiscal 2024. That's not $270 billion that's going to get broken up, divided equally, or divided at all, based on population or any, and then just given to the states to spend. It's $270 billion that's going to go in the pockets of Elon Musk and Robert Mercer and the Koch family and the Walton family and Peter Thiel and Jeffrey Yass and all the other billionaires who don't need a fracking penny of it, while your kids go without. You won't just have a pared down school district, you'll have none. None. In municipalities across the country, the closing of the Department of Education will mean local property taxes dedicated to schools will double, triple, quadruple, quintuple. Municipalities simply will not be able to afford the dramatic tax increases it will take to keep the schools open. So they'll shut them. And 90%, and to be honest with you, I thought it was higher than that, 90% of the school-age children in this country will go without. Education will be returned to a status in this country prior to the Civil War, where it was, you get it if you can afford it. And if you can't, go work in the fields.
Yep.
And then child labor becomes not only available, but necessary. Labor no longer becomes skilled and organized. It becomes cheap and desperate. And that's all of what we're going to cover for the time that Liz is able to be with us, because she's fancy now and has her own podcast she has to go do later
I
in the
did one
evening.
before.
She's
So I'm
evolved way past this measly little show here. And so we're going to cover all of that tonight. So Liz Mikitarian, welcome with my very long-winded opening. Welcome back to the program. It's excellent to see you. You look well and happy. I hope so. Please remind folks, who is Liz Mikitarian and how did you get here?
Sure. Well, I'm a retired kindergarten teacher. I'm currently in the state of Florida. Spend half of the year in Massachusetts and half in Florida. So it's kind of like the two ends of the spectrum I get to look at, education-wise. And I was attacked by my local Moms for Liberty members when they first started up groups here in Florida. As you know, they were founded in Florida. And I thought, man, is my entire career under attack here? You know, was it not worth anything? And so I thought, well, maybe they're just attacking me. And that wasn't the case. I reached out across Florida and found that indeed a lot of my colleagues were being attacked, being called names, having accusations hurled at them. And I just thought, okay, so do I shut up and go into retirement, or do I let my profession be dismantled one member at a time? And that's where we are now. We're in 45 states, I believe it is. We have groups within, as you stated, some of the state groups have all the way drilled down to your local district level chapters within Stop Moms for Liberty. And we do various things. We prompt the membership to get involved in national, state, and local initiatives that are happening. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not staging a protest somewhere. We're letting people know that a protest is being planned by X group and for them to go and support that. So we're not about building our image. We're about connecting the people that are doing the work on the ground. Because that's what I found out nationally, is that there was a ton of pushback, but people weren't talking to each other. They didn't reach over to the next county over when, you know, there was some issue that NAACP, for example, was helping one county on. They had the same issue in the next county, but they didn't think to even ask NAACP. So, you know, I've given some of this intro before. I'm sure, Jeff, you're remembering some of it. But yeah, so I'm spending my retirement making sure that public education, public school teachers, and teachers as a whole really retain the dignity that they so well deserve. Are there bad apples? Of course there are. I would be the first one to boot them out of my profession. I've done so, and I would continue to do so. Anybody that crosses lines that should not be crossed. The problem is that all of this rhetoric has made people believe, to some extent anyway, that teachers are all crossing the line everywhere. and that teachers are, instilling their own beliefs in children. And that's flat out incorrect and untruthful. And if there are any incidences, they're being dealt with, of course. But we're talking about attacking your local school, attacking the teachers that you go to church with, teachers that you go to the grocery store with. This is not an okay approach to attack educators. Our earlier podcast today was about librarians, and the same thing is happening within our library structure, both in public schools and in the public realm as well, the public libraries. And that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, those damn socialist libraries.
Well, and it's, all these names are hurled around, and because of lack of information, people think, oh yeah, that sounds like communism to me, or that sounds like socialism to me, or, oh my gosh, that's so liberal. And I mean, until not too long ago, I was a Republican, folks. So, it's not that there's this extremism going on our side of these issues. It's basically that we believe that we need to be a society of inclusion. And just because you don't like a particular person or group does not mean that they should have their rights stripped away. Because
hey,
where
Liz,
do you draw the line?
Is it more basic than that? Because I've talked on this program probably since day one, that I think one of the greatest lies, just flat out lies, that has been foisted on the American people, and I don't just mean citizens, but residents, anybody who's living here. Dogs, cats, trees, I mean anything that's alive that's living on this land, is the idea that we are not a society, that we are not a community, that we're just a group of rugged individuals who formed a nation. I don't know how individuals form anything that is inherently defined as a group, like a nation or a community or whatever. But that said, the sports team, for bloody sake, I mean, individuals you can't entirely remain individualistic and conform and work in a group. But isn't this really just it's just that bigger extension of the lie that we're not a society, and we're not a community. And even if that community is not just a local municipality, but your state, your region, your county, it seems to me to be a bit more basic. That we've just been lied into, not just, maybe I don't understand that trans individual, but the idea that individual is not me, and I'm not connected to that person, and they aren't connected to me. We're just rugged individuals with the whipped cream on top being, I hate them because they're different than me.
Well, a lot of the misinformation is what's driving this. And I think you have a valid point that, yes, we are a nation of individuals, obviously, of rugged individuals, and that's who built this country. But the mindset has changed through the years to have better understanding of what's going on in society. And we have become more broad in that, and we have become, as a society, more inclusive. And that's why the powers that be, the politicians, the large corporations, have really jumped on that, you're losing your individuality, you're losing your individual rights, when they're actually the ones that are stripping people of their rights. And they're very false in their statements of they're the only ones that are going to protect you. I think we're seeing that unfold with the MAGA folks that are, dropping off like flies because they see that, they were fed a bunch of BS. And they were told that prices were going to come down and things were going to be better. I mean, look at the stock market, prices, all of that.
$5 trillion of worth has been wiped out of the Dow.
I just read that the Trump
in 3
administration, from January till a date in February was the gathering of the data, has spent $36 billion more than Biden at the same time frame. So this whole thing that's going on now with, we've got to save money by narrowing in this federal government, they're full of it, because that's not what they're doing. So in your introduction, you were talking about the Department of Education, and I will say that I do not think that the Department of Education is going to fold up, because they're not authorized to do so. That would take an act of Congress to do that.
This
But they're very
administration
sneaky.
has openly, they tweet about it. They talk about it on
I know.
Fox about how they have
I
flat
know.
out ignored court orders.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution, Trump has talked about the Constitution having to be something that needs to be suspended,
Right.
and that
Right.
birthright citizenship, which is clearly outlined in the
Mm-hmm.
Constitution, is actually it's actually worded out specifically written in the Constitution, that he'd like to ignore that
yeah.
as well. So where does that? An act of Congress created the Department of Education. It takes an
Correct.
act of Congress to close it. First
Correct.
off, Republicans control both houses of Congress. They could close it if they wanted to. That said, what makes us think that this regime would even bother or care that it would take an act of Congress to close it? They didn't care about USAID. It would take an act of Congress to close that as well. A memo
But all
leaked.
of that we're seeing the pushback on, and we're seeing things going away that he thought was going to be very easy changes. A lot of that funding for USAID is still in place. They've reinstituted. I just saw a lawsuit that said about I guess it was federal employees, that he was to put them back in place. And related to the Department of Education, like I said, they're going to be very coy about this. They're not necessarily going to close up the offices and fire all employees, but what they're actually doing right now is eliminating the employees that do the work. And so that's where the fallout will be. You can have a Department of Education and it can sit there with their billions of dollars, and it will sit there because they don't have the employees to distribute the funds. There are systems in place where the federal government issues grants or different levels of funding into the states. But if they don't have the employees to work on that system, then that money is going to stay in the federal government and it won't be distributed to the states. And that's what's happening now. That's why he just pulled out, I think it was half of the Department of Education employees. It's so that it stops things like the speediness of Pell Grants. They're not going to say we're going to get rid of the Pell Grants, but what they're showing and
Actually, Project
telling us-
2025 does actually specifically
well, I know,
outline
but they're not
that.
going to put that out there. They're doing all these, fancy backstep moves, and they're eliminating a timeline of when these things are supposed to happen. And so kids won't get their Pell Grants in time for it to be effective and applied into the school of their choice.
Well, we've seen-
so it's a very coy effort on their part to take away from the American public, and that's what we need to be aware of. And it's a lot because we can't think, oh, they're going to destroy the Department of Education and just throw our hands up in the air and say, well, that's a done deal. It's not that fast and it's not that easy. But what we need to do is chip away at the actions that are taking place. Related to special education, they're not chipping away at IEPs yet, but they are chipping away at 504 plans, which is an additional piece of support that students get. If they have anything that interferes with their learning, they can get a 504 plan so that they can be eligible for accommodations. And so I've said throughout all of my advocacy that folks that are trying to push for things that are bad will always select the low-hanging fruit. So the low-hanging fruit, I think we've talked about the Seven Mountains Mandate before on this show. The lowest hanging fruit in that group was education, because no one paid attention to what was happening in education. So they were able to slide in their people, slide in their agenda without much emphasis on that. And I think people are paying attention now. I'm hearing from teachers, they're not being brought back in the fall, and parents are hearing that. And it's really rising to a level of people just starting to really ramp up their efforts against this. If you've heard of the town hall meetings, the empty chair town hall meetings, it's a wonderful initiative that's happening. And I hate to say it, it's meant to shame some of the representatives that don't show up to speak to their constituents. And that's where we need to be. We need to say, you're not doing your jobs. And all areas will be impacted. There won't be any states that are not impacted by the changes at the federal level.
There won't be
and
any.
those that are impacted
There won't be a
most
single
will be the
district
red
that's not
states.
impacted.
The red states will be impacted most by the changes that they're trying to do at the national level. And yet, people think that, they were on the right side of history by electing Trump and his cronies into office. It's not trickling down the way that they thought it was going to.
Well, something's trickling down on them. I think we know the old saying, what rolls downhill.
Right, the FAFO, right?
1,300 employees of the Department of Education who are responsible for civil rights
Yep.
And disability rights for students have already been summarily fired.
Right.
Regional offices in New York, Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, San Francisco, I want to say LA, San Diego, and Phoenix as well, but I may have that wrong. I'm working from memory. Have been closed. Flat closed. Thousands, roughly 6,000 pending civil rights cases in front of the Department of Education are now in complete limbo. Is there any way to explain to people in a sort of not simplistic, that's not the word I'm looking for, but a more understandable way than I think maybe that headline would say, what those folks do at the Department of Education and why it's important, why it is such a story that they are now gone, fired, just summarily fired?
Yeah. I've always been a little, I don't know if I'd say suspicious, but non-supportive of the Department of Education. As a teacher all those years, there were a lot of things that made my life more difficult, paperwork-wise, retirement-wise, requirement-wise. And I'm the first to say that the department, just like every other branch of government and every other institution and department, probably needs a great review and a change in some of the practices and policies. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing blatant motions being done, and when those folks are removed from their positions, things all slow down. And when things slow down, that's when you're impacted at your local school. So, for example, this 504 plan is their first attack. If they eliminate the ability for a parent to get a 504 plan for their child, that means the child with asthma is most probably not going to get any accommodations. That means that the child that has, blurred vision or something, I'm just thinking of broad examples, that it will be harder because the IEP process is a little bit more entailed to get that for your child. And frankly, some kids wouldn't qualify for an IEP when they might qualify for a 504, and that gives them that extra layer of support while they're in schools. And so the federal government really makes sure that we add those protections for students. You talk about special education community, you talk about civil rights, and looking at those communities, English speakers of other languages, or I said that wrong, language speakers of other languages, I don't know, but you know what I mean, ELA students, the folks that are learning English. Those supports are going to be minimized and slowed down. And like I said, they're not going to necessarily say, okay, so we're not going to send any money to schools for kids that, need after-school tutoring. What they're going to do is slow down the process so the districts can't get their hooks into that funding. And that's where they eliminate employees that run that system. That's what the people that they're eliminating. It's blatantly obvious to me because I've been following education all of this time. But when you do things and you put the wheels in play, some of the different states have looked to see how they can get their funding from the federal government, and they're being told things like, well, there are no agents available for you right now to do that inquiry. Here, go to this other website instead. They go to the other website, and they're getting the same thing. There are no staff members available for you to do that inquiry. What does that mean for your local school? It means that that check is not coming. And when the check doesn't come, lots of things at any school are impacted. I worked at Title I schools all of my career. I wouldn't have been employed because I was a Title I teacher. And that funding is so critical to those in low socioeconomic schools. That has been something that we have relied on for decades. And when you look at things like the English language learners, if you look at things like special education students, civil rights cases, as you stated, but it's not only that, it's looking at someone has to have oversight to make sure that districts are not doing things like targeting black students for discipline referrals. That's not going to be targeted on your local level most of the time. It takes some research. It takes some really deep dives into what's actually happening. In my own district, they won't do an audit to find out if this is an issue or not. We just sort of keep, pushing the needle on that yes, it is an issue. And so if you cut off that stream of information from the federal government, then those things are going to be allowed to happen. Equal access to higher level learning. The federal government is who, through their anti-discrimination policies and practices, are what make higher level learning opportunities available to all students. And, I hate to say it, some students don't have a parent that are advocating for them. So if the system isn't, if the Department of Education isn't, then where do those students end up? Will they end up in the let's go have you pick the cotton in the fields group? And it's just all of these pieces tied together, and we need to all stand up and be more informed. And that's why, coming on podcasts like this is so critical, because people need to hear the reality of what's happening, not the spin that some of the major networks seem to be putting out there.
You mentioned, let me reset the program. It's 6:37 p.m. 6:37. Holy heck, I remembered my bottom of the hour reset. That's a first. That hasn't happened in quite a while, especially on our 1 hour program where I tend to blast through that bit. But we're scheduled to be here with you for 3 hours tonight. We will take you as long as I am physically capable of taking you. We took a migraine med before I came up here because my head, I think, was quite literally going to burst open, which would make excellent television. But, that trick only lasts once. You can only do that once, You can only die on the air once. This is the Kennedy Effect for the 16th of March, 2025. We are live right now on the Facebook pages of the TCP Media Group, Our Revolution, Pennsylvania, Ghost Claw Productions, and of course hot101.net, live on our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, live on the very same name YouTube channel as well, That Other Side of Information, as well as the YouTube channel for Ghost Claw Productions Radio. 2 radio stations blasting around the globe. One of the very first, hot101.net. Of course, our name is our web address, hot101.net, hot.1. No, I put the dot in the wrong place. hot101.net, hot101.net. Our name is our web address, but you don't have to listen to the main website to listen, although you can if you wish to. 100% for free. You can also use our apps, Apple App Store for Apple devices, Google Play Store for Android devices, and for all other types of devices, the Tune In radio app. Go up to the search bar, type in hot101.net, and you're listening. No credit card, no retina scan, no blood sample needed. Don't have to give away your firstborn. If you would like to give me a credit card, okay, I'll take it, but you don't need to. You can listen to us 100% for free. hot101.net. The music returns here on hot101.net immediately following the end of our program. Ghost Claw Productions Radio, GCPR.live, the radio station I am humbled enough to be a 100% equal half partner. That didn't make sense. I knew what I was trying to get at. It was very muddled. It didn't make sense. I'll work on it, and I'll get back to you. With Thomas, Ghost Claw Productions Radio. You go to our website, go to any search engine, type in www.gcpr.live, and you can listen to us 100% for free as well. But also at our website, you can learn all about our station, find out our broadcast schedule, learn about the hosts, the shows, all of it live right there at our website, gcpr.live. You can also get our Android app, fully functioning Android app with an Apple app under construction as we speak. And I was going to say you could tell Alexa, that's wrong. You can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. We're not on Alexa quite yet. And to be honest with you, I don't even know how it works. Like, I don't know if you pay Google to be on Alexa or what the heck that is. But not quite yet. But we do have the Android app, and you can listen to us through the website as well. Following us on gcpr.live. The Villain's View from 9 p.m. Well, pre-show from 8:30. Main show, full gear, from turn the key on the engine, kind of run on battery power for the first half hour. Then they start the engine and they're off to the races from 9. The Villain's View from 9 p.m. Conversations with T. Nathan from 11. Thomas starts off your broadcast work week tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. with the sound of coffee. All times, of course, are Eastern Daylight Times, unless I say something different, or goof up, because it could be that too. You mentioned the 504 a couple of different times. I just wanted to see if we could more basically explain what would happen, what your experience tells you would happen to special needs students with the elimination of the Department of Education. What happens to the student who's in a wheelchair? What happens to the autistic student? What happens to what happens to the I'm going to really grope for the right term here. What happens for the student who may be in a quote-unquote mainstream classroom but still needs, either has an attendant with them, and I don't think attendant is the right word, I'm probably using the wrong term, but is special needs but okay, and I guess okay enough is probably explains it, to be in the mainstream classroom but still just needs that extra employee, that extra staff person to be with them even though they're in the general classroom. Because from everything that I have been able to take in, and I don't claim to be an expert on it, I don't claim to know exactly all of the ramifications. It's why I'm so thrilled that you're here. But one of the very first things that seems to be talked about on the talking head programs and on the radio and in the various news articles about, you know, the intended destruction of the Department of Education is that it's students with disabilities who are really going to get hurt first. Mm-hmm. They're kind of the canaries in the coal mine here. So what is there a way to explain what would happen to these students? And I realize there's many different types of things that are listed as a special needs student, but what happens to them? How does that federal backing, and I think as you mentioned, not just the financial backing, but the law, the right. backing of the law, and the folks who enforce it. What happens to these kids?
Well, we have to really hold on to what the ultimate agenda is. It's to drive kids that are different in any way, shape, or form out of the school system. And they think that doing so is fine because their children will not be impacted by some of the things that are happening. We literally have had Moms for Liberty members say, my kids shouldn't have to go to school with those kids. Well, I'm here to tell you, I started in the early 80s, so I was in education for quite a bit, and it's been a long and hard struggle to move toward better inclusion because it's just fundamentally right. If you live in a community, you should be able to get an education and be educated with your peers in the community. But that's not the belief that's coming from the other side. And so, slow but sure, they will start removing the supports that allow kids that have these needs to function in a regular classroom. AIDS is usually it's a classroom aid. that, you were referencing. And students, if that's eliminated, the child might not be able to function. So what does the parent then do? They look at other options. And, other options traditionally in the private school setting have not really been big on accepting kids that have any kind of special needs. I mean, that's pretty well documented. And I think the belief is that they don't have a right to be educated, period. And I'm on the other end of that with, I believe that everyone has the right to be educated, and if they take certain supports to be able to do so, I think as a society, we should be able to do that. And it's to our benefit. Some of the best experiences that my students had were interacting with children that were in wheelchairs, or children that were blind, or had hearing difficulties. And we benefit as a society when we build up those that have challenges of any kind. And the same folks in Moms for Liberty, I was at a meeting about black discipline within my district. One of them had the nerve to stand up and say that her children should not have to go to school with those children. I mean, my mouth hit the floor that somebody would not only think that, but would say that publicly. And those are the kind of things that we have to push back against. We want to be an inclusive society, and they will chip away at the supports that are needed to do the inclusion, to, make sure that kids are safe with equipment, things of that nature that would make that educational opportunity available to all kids. With a student that I had that did not have vision, she had to have materials in Braille, and she learned very well with the rest of my class based on being provided with accommodations that would help her to do that. And the belief on the other side, the far right agenda, is that no, if you waver out from this typical child, then no, we don't have an obligation to educate you. And that's pretty disgusting in my mind, because there, by the grace of God, go I, right?
As you do to the least among me.
And it's, anyone can have a child that has special needs. Does that make them less than? I don't think so. At least in my mind, I don't think so. And so that's why I've always been an advocate for inclusion and, the supports that are needed. And I've seen the benefit for all students. You talk about having that extra person in the class. Well, guess what? That extra person does not stand over the child with special needs and only help the child with special needs. That's an extra set of hands to help the entire classroom, to help the 2 seats over that's having the same problem in math, let's say. So, not looking at that big picture of why inclusion is a positive thing is something that, a lot of people have struggled with, and the folks in the driver's seats now think that it's just not worth doing. And so they want to do things like impact, the funding that goes out to schools. Schools, by law, are supposed to meet whatever is written in the IEP. Well, if you fundamentally cannot do that, then what do? You cut your football program because you statutorily have to meet the needs of special education students. Talking about pitting people against each other, right? And so, that whole idea of pulling the funding, it's not going to be overnight. Like I said, that they are going to say, okay, so we're no longer going to fund any classroom aides across the country. But they say tricky statements, and I wanted to read this because I didn't want to misquote her. But our new Secretary of Education, who is the, Worldwide Wrestling Queen?
She was married to Vince McMahon. She's a co-founder of Worldwide Entertainment,
yes.
which in shorthand is professional wrestling.
Yes. Well,
and by the way, to be fair to her,
not a wrestling ring.
Yeah, and by the way, to be fair to her, deserves perfectly justified credit for building a multi-billion-dollar worldwide corporation. She's a billionaire in her own right. She has no ties whatsoever to education. She's never taught. She hasn't been in the classroom. She's a businesswoman and an accomplished one, but has there's literally no justification whatsoever for her to be in this position, and she was put in the position with under the express direction of Project 2025 and Trump to dismantle and close, shut down, or I think Trump's quote was something along the line of "put yourself out of a job," to shut down the Department of Education, as is very plainly outlined in Project 2025.
And our job is to make sure that that doesn't happen as the ultimate in their actions. So her words, as I stated, they're sly about things. She actually didn't know what IDEA was, which is all of the federal funding that supports those supports that I'm talking about in the schools. That's your Secretary of Education. Maybe she should do a little homework about what her job actually encompasses. So she said that what she is doing wouldn't affect funding for special education, for student loans, or high poverty schools. But she had also stated all divisions within the department are impacted by the reduction. So what she said matches what I'm telling you, is that she's stating that, oh no, we're not going to cut off the funding, but they're going to cut off the distribution of the funding. They're not going to pull all the dollars out of the Department of Education overnight. That's not going to happen. But what they're doing is they're making it harder for the states to then apply for funding. And that goes everywhere from K-12 through college level. And that's their plan, is to just make it so difficult to access those funds. Well, what happens when there are a lot of funds sitting in the federal government? They become easy marks for those that want to do nefarious things. And I've also heard that part of the agenda will be to move certain aspects of the Department of Education into other branches of government or other departments within the government. Well, they're cutting and getting rid of people there too. So what are they going to do? Put part of the onus of the Department of Education into the Social Security Administration? They've already just cut all kinds of people in there. So it's like smoke and mirrors that they're doing in Washington, and we just need to stay informed and not believe it when they say statements like, oh, don't worry. I'm telling you to worry, because if we don't take action, if we don't stay informed and fight back in whatever way, shape, or form. I'm not asking any of your viewers to, start a network like I did, right? That's just my craziness, I think. But do something. Look at your local elections, look at your state level elections. I'll tell you one thing people need to look at. There are 2 elections coming up in Florida and 1 in New York, and those are 3 seats in the House of Representatives that we can flip. And yes, if you're in Pennsylvania sitting there, you can't necessarily vote for these people, but you can share their information. You can share about their campaigns, and if you feel so moved, you can even donate to campaigns. But we need to look at being strategic with our pushback. And that is a great step that we can take, and that's like April 1st. That's coming up really soon, those elections. I think the one in New York is a little bit later than that. I don't have the date on that, but I know in Florida.
I think that one actually goes into September, which is odd, rather than just election day.
Yeah, it's an odd kind of thing, and that they're not at the same time. So basically, these are the seats that have been vacated by people that have moved to
into the administration.
Federal positions.
You said something in your answer that no matter how much I try to work these programs out in a logical manner, usually an answer or a comment or a word will kind of throw into my brain, and then I end up going off on some kind of tangent, and I'm going to do exactly that right now. You mentioned in your last answer, we want to have an inclusive society. Do we? And here's why I ask. Only about 60% of the population that was eligible to vote in 2024 did so. Trump got 49.9% of that, 49.9% of that vote. He has never surpassed 50% in any election, and only once in a poll. The percentage of people eligible that put him back in the White House is only about 30% of the total population.
That's not a mandate.
So that said, and they knew what they were voting for. They knew bloody well what they were voting for. So at risk of having the entire program have the half empty glass on my side and the half full one on yours, when you say we want an inclusive society, who's we? And do we? And my question is not meant to disagree with you, because I do. You and I clearly share these values. And by the way, that's what they are. They're not political opinions. They're not policy.
Right.
They're fracking values. They're personal, for me,
Morals.
faith-based moral values. And maybe I'm splitting hairs, and you can tell me if you think I'm guilty of splitting hairs. But when we just kind of say, well, we want an inclusive society, do we? Because so far, because I tell you honestly, it doesn't seem like it.
Well, I think we need to look at the term more broadly, and by inclusive, I mean everyone gets a fair shot. It's not that there are certain groups that would be included. Inclusion to me means that everyone is treated equally. And yes, there is a segment of our population that has been fueled, I call it taking the lid off the garbage can, of people that have felt this way all along, that don't want to have people of color succeed, that don't want to have anything other than the straight white Christian, narrative in this country. But it's not a mandate, and it's not a majority. And so as long as we can say that, then yeah, I believe that more people believe that we should have an equal and fair society. And unfortunately, some of them don't go and vote. And so the impetus is on us to make people wake up and to realize that yes, they can have impact on their belief if they, want to make sure that equal rights are an important thing. I mean, look at women's rights. Even in the state of Florida, we basically passed a women's reproductive rights law, but because it was, messed with a long time ago, it had to be 60% instead of over 50%. And we were like at 57%. That's the state of Florida, folks. So, I mean, if everybody thinks we're so wacko down here, we're not. And so, it's playing the game that they've been playing, because they've been brilliant. The right and extremism has been brilliant in strategy, and every step of the way they've known what they were doing.
And patience.
And lots of patience.
They've been this way since the Republican Great Depression.
When I first learned about the efforts to try and privatize education, it was 30-something years ago when I was in Michigan. And I felt relieved when Betsy DeVos went kind of quiet for a while. Shame on me, I thought we were safe. But I knew that
is it roughly half of the education system in Michigan privatized now at this point? I think it's half and half, isn't it?
On Michigan. I'm not sure.
That's how the DeVos family became billionaires, in the private, for-profit, quote-unquote, education industry. And I'll just
well, they've left a wake of destruction when they're doing their activities. I mean, they've got orphanages, they've got all kinds of stuff under their umbrella. So we won't go off on that tangent. That's a whole nother show, too. But I thought that we were kind of safe, but then when she was appointed, the DOE person,
she was Secretary of Education and Trump 1.0. Yeah.
I realized, this is a bigger picture than what I thought it was, and that's when I learned about things like the Heritage Foundation, which is the information piece of this whole movement on
part
the
of
far
the Koch
right.
network and the major
Koch
sponsors
network.
and authors of Project
Yep.
2020.
ALEC is all about privatization of schools and other industries. but
Koch
schools
network
is
as well,
what's
fully funded
being-
by the Koch
Yep.
network. Yep.
Yep, absolutely. And that's when I saw this intricate web that had been built. And you're right, it's been a very patient approach. And, kudos to them for being so strategic, but shame on us if we're not strategic now to work in opposition to them. And so it's not easy, but we've got to, and it's very trite, right? It's like, okay, we've got to get out the vote. No, we have to inform people first that this is hurting them. And if they allow things to happen, I like to say that voting is not for a politician or for, people say, oh, I don't get involved in politics. I like to change that narrative to governance. And who makes the decisions for you? You better be involved in who makes the decisions for you, because if you're not involved, then you're just like the little people that don't matter. And I don't think that our country is based on that. I don't think that we're a bunch of little people that don't matter. I believe that the strength of our country is coming kind of together now to realize, wow, we're really under attack here. I'm pretty old. I've never heard about threats to democracy except for in other countries where it was happening. That's never happened in the U.S. under, my lifetime. Of course, there have been things like some book manning, things in the history. So, we're not unblemished history. But this is the biggest and greatest push that they'll ever have to remove our democratic government in the United States. And even if you don't give a flying flip about education, realize what is happening. And it is the removal of power of the individuals that you said, rugged individuals, into a small group of people's hands. And that is really bad for our nation. No matter what your positions are on anything. You can say, well, it's not so bad if, we put more power into the presidency. Oh, really? You say that because you might be a Trump supporter. Would you want to have done that with, let's say, a Biden or a Kennedy presidency? That we shift, the balance of powers that the founding fathers set up? So that's our goal, is to, a lot of people are really angry at the MAGA people. I can't be angry. And I don't feel bad for them. They're, FAFO right now with their lives. But I feel like it's our opportunity that we do have to keep educating with the truth. And the truth is that we're under attack. Yes, of course, my personal passion is education, but we're seeing it in all the branches. For crying out loud, cutting services to veterans, but they're sly. They're not saying we're cutting services to veterans. They're cutting the employees that do the work to get services.
80,000 of them.
Social Security. Oh, we're not messing with Social Security. Oh, really? But they tried to do things like, well, you can't apply over the phone anymore. Really? It's all taking away our liberties. And if people don't recognize that, then they're part of the problem right now. And I think more and more, some have to put their hand on the hot stove to really tap into what's going on.
Oh, man.
And,
we talked about that last week, about how some folks only learn through failure. Yeah. Some of these MAGA voters who have had the red hat on for a decade now, and haven't washed it and haven't cleaned it, and it's like molded onto their head now. It's an extension of the skin. They're going to have to lose everything before they realize that they were cannon fodder, that they were the dirt in between the tire treads. That's them.
They don't matter. Yeah.
And never did, and never.
I had a conversation online with somebody. I can't remember what it was on, some platform. And it was an elderly lady. She had a profile picture that was quite elderly. I'm assuming that was her. And it was about how much she loved the current president, and that his agenda is pure, and that, he's a very deeply thinking individual and is doing the best for our nation. And I mean, she's like one of the too far gone, is what I like to call them. But I'm telling you, when that woman realizes that her Social Security check is, first it'll be 3 weeks late, then it will be a month late, and then it will be that, oh, well, we're not going to be able to do that until the next quarter. We're talking about people's livelihoods at this point. And, what's it going to take? It's going to take their veterans benefits being cut off. It's going to take those personal experiences, unfortunately, for those that are too far gone.
When their VA hospital shuts.
Absolutely.
And they don't have the insurance or the money to pay for private.
So what's going to happen?
Insurance.
People are going to die. Eventually, if this is left unchecked, people will die. People will become poor. People will become homeless. Is that what we really want as a society?
Hoovervilles.
To have more of the problems. Well, I'm telling you right now, the billionaire class, that is what they want. Because then that segregation will happen right to filling in their agenda, that they are the only ones that matter. And they've gotten their tendrils in. Right now it's in education pretty strongly. But those tendrils, like you said, they've been very patient. And they've filtered in over the course of years. And it's mostly by saying one thing and doing another thing. So they've told people what they needed to hear. Those people are coming to get you. When in fact it was really the billionaire class and the large corporations and you know, the mega groups that are out there like BlackRock. You know, those are the groups that are the danger right now to the average American citizen. And that's why it's so important that we keep informing people. This isn't about, you know, you want to be able to tell every kid that they can be gay. That is not what this is about. This is about not othering groups of people. Because once you allow that to happen, I mean, we've moved a long way in the civil rights movement. We're going to go backwards now?
Reverend Niemuller's poem.
You know, and it's, how are we going to move forward as a society that does not reflect what the United States has touted itself to be for its entire existence? Bring me your, you know, your poor and your huddled masses. It's right there on the statue that represents the country. United States, one nation is in our you know, all the things that we say on a regular basis. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. I'm not trying to be cutesy here, but I believe those are the foundational principles of this country. Because otherwise we would have stayed in England, folks. Because we had a king in England,
yeah.
And that king controlled what was going on, and it persecuted people and limited their religious freedom. So folks came to this country, many of whom came by choice. Many did not have a choice to come here, unfortunately. But once we're here, it was about freedom. Well, there is no freedom if everyone isn't free. And I'm not talking about, you know, some of the stuff that they like to pour down your throat, like, oh, what's next? Then, you know, child predators are going to be a welcome subclass. No, they're not. They will never be a welcome subclass. And you know, throwing stuff out there, this extremist approach to trying to fight off this inclusion process is ridiculous.
7:07 Eastern Daylight Time, although daylight is waning, as we are expecting a whale of a thunderstorm to come through here in the Lehigh Valley. It's late. It was supposed to have been here before we started. The wind is still pretty crazy. You may have heard some thunder here in our first hour. If we should magically disappear, it's either going to be because of power or the internet just goes.
Or my harassers came after me.
Yeah, right. They hacked us both. They hacked us both and shut us down. One of the proudest moments that I have had in this program, in the 6-year life of this program, is the night that George and I were talking about the Ukraine war. It was very close to the beginning of the war. And we got notices from Facebook in the midst of the program that your video has been shut off.
Wow.
And we were trying to figure out, and I'm watching the video, and I continue to do so. The Facebook feed is in front of me here. The YouTube channel's up over here. And just so I can keep an eye on it and make sure that everything's going and make sure that I don't miss any comments or questions or anything like that. And so I see it pop up, and I don't think we had a guest that night, or the guest had already had to move on. So just George and I were talking, like, did you just see this thing that came up? And he's, yeah, I did it. And so we, right live on the air, we decided to look into it. We had been shut off in Russia and Belarus.
Interesting.
And I thought to myself, tell me nobody's listening. tell me nobody's listening. I have to remind myself of that occasionally, that people
That
are
is a
listening.
point of
But
pride, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually take my death threat as a point of pride too, because if I wasn't saying something, they wouldn't want to shut me up. But anyway, 7:09 Eastern Daylight Time here. This is the Kennedy Effect, live with you for the oh my God, the 6th. I have the 25th in my brain. I'll get to that next week. For the 16th of March, 2025. We are live right now on the Facebook pages of the TCP Media Group, Our Revolution Pennsylvania, hot101.net, and of course Ghost Claw Productions Radio. We are live on our home group Facebook page for all things surrounding the program. That Other Side of Information. It's also the name of one of our YouTube channels, That Other Side of Information as well. You can watch us live either place. And if you should ever miss any of our live programs, the single best place to go to catch up on our program or to watch the recording remains the YouTube channels, That Other Side of Information, and the YouTube channel for Ghost Claw Productions Radio. And for all of our social media, I know how trite and kind of it's almost become its own joke for folks who do what I do. Please, I'm asking, like, follow, subscribe,
And share. Yeah.
all of that crap. I know it seems ridiculous, but it helps us a great deal.
Absolutely.
We're still, I would really like to get to 1,500 members of the Facebook group by Easter is my goal. I'm 500 away on TikTok from being able to broadcast there live. We picked up like 2 or 3 more followers just today. So please, you might not think that when you tap on that like button that it doesn't really mean anything. It does. It does. It means everything, not just to me personally, but the proliferation, big word considering I'm not speaking well tonight, proliferation of the program throughout the social media landscape. So I hope that you will continue to be continue to do exactly that. Please share, like, subscribe, follow, yada yada, all the way through. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. 2 global internet radio giants, hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn radio app. And of course, you can ask Alexa to play hot101.net. GCPR.live, learn everything you ever wanted to know about GCPR.live and more. It's not really a warning, it's just there's a lot of info there on our website. Please check it out, www.gcpr.live. You can listen there for free. Find the merch store, find out our live broadcast schedule, find out about all the hosts, stories of the shows, and so on and so on. It's all right there. We have an active operational Android app as well for GCPR.live with an Apple app under construction. Please tell everyone you know about GCPR.live. Greatest thing really about Hot 101 and GCPR is you can listen to us 100% for free. Since we are at the top of the hour, let me remind you about our sponsor, smoothca.online. SmoothCA, SMOOTH. I'm spelling because there's a teacher here. smoothca.online. Natural skin care. Create a healthy skin lifestyle. Smooth California is family owned. Main purpose is to help you create that healthy skin lifestyle. Smooth California is a healthy alternative to commercial products that are filled with chemicals and additives. When you smear that stuff on top of you, it doesn't just stay there. It leaches down into the body. It's made with chemicals that your body was not built to filter and to get rid of and to handle and to process. Not Smooth California. Smooth California is tallow based, 100% natural, no preservatives, no additives. You can have a healthy skincare lifestyle, and if your skin is healthy, your body is healthy. SmoothCA.online, Smooth California. Go to their website and check it out, and we are proud and humbled to have them as a sponsor of TKE Tonight and the Kennedy Effect. Programming note: The music returns to you immediately after we sign off here on hot101.net at GCPR. You had The Villain's View pre-show from 8:30, the live full-throttle broadcast from 9, Conversations with T. Nathan from 11. Thomas kicks off your broadcast work week tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. with the sound of coffee. Our guest is Liz Mikitarian. She is a 3 or 4-time loser, showing up, hanging out with me, wasting her time here on our program.
I can't tell which way to put up mine.
She's been kind enough to return to the program yet again. We will catch up on what Moms for Liberty has been doing. Liz, of course, the founder of Stop Moms, wearing the Stop Moms shirt, by the way. We'll catch up with what the moms are up to. Right now, we have been focused on what it's going to mean to you to see the Federal Department of Education go away, as is outlined by Project 2025 and is already underway with the firing of 1,300 civil rights workers within the Department of Education. Regional offices in 8 cities have already shuttered, including right here in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. No warning was given to the employees. People showed up to track their civil rights claims, file new claims at the regional office for the Department of Education in Philadelphia, only to find that it was closed.
Yeah.
And if you don't think these folks are serious, the building that housed USAID has already been given to another agency. Even if the Trump regime was to suddenly comply with the law, which they have openly flaunted they have no intention of doing, because the judiciary has no enforcement power. It does not have a police force. And Trump, his followers, his sycophants, the 2025 paid for people are running law enforcement federally, so they're not going to enforce a court order on themselves. Even though multiple courts have ordered, as a matter of law, with threat of contempt and jail, that USAID be refunded, that all of its employees be rehired, and that funding begin to flow immediately. None of that has happened. None. And the building is already gone. It's already gone. Logging, mining, fossil fuel drilling interests are already beginning to stage equipment outside of national parks so they can begin. Why does Trump have an obsession with Greenland? Because global climate change has exposed parts of Greenland to the open air. The ice sheet is gone. There's an estimated $3 to $4 trillion worth of rare earth elements under Greenland. You don't think he wanted it for vacation purposes, do you? Or to protect the ice sheet? No, to get rid of the rest of it so they can drill under it. This is what we're looking at now. Liz, more optimistic than I. She has talked in our first hour about what's left of our democracy. I've already told you in this program repeatedly, that transition is complete. This is not a small d democratic nation anymore. We are a fascist nation. Period. End of story. That transition is done now. Will we stand and fight against the next great transition from fascism to feudalism? And education is a huge part of that. What is the great equalizer in society? Education. How do you get yourself a better job? How do you move up economically through the classes? And oh yes, by the way, there is a class system here in this country. We'd like to think there isn't one, but there is.
Absolutely.
It's education that is the main ladder, so to speak, to help you climb up from one level to the next. So we continue to talk about, as I said, we'll catch up on what Moms for Liberty is up to, but we've been focused so far What happens to the United States? What does this country look like without a federal Department of Education? What happens to your local school district, your state, students with disabilities, and on and on and on? Liz Randall mentioned something in the chat about that the Department of Education, this is not exactly what he wrote. I'm kind of interpreting a little bit, and I think he'll probably agree with my interpretation. When it was actually George H.W. Bush that signed the American Disabilities Act in 1992 into law, one of the great defenders, enforcers, I guess. I always hate to say enforcement. It sounds so top-heavy, and it sounds so, black shirt. But one of the great defenders of the Americans for Disabilities Act was the Department of Education. What happens to, where are we with the ADA, or large sections of it, without the Department of Education to back up that law? That law seems to me would just sort of kind of fade to the dustbin of history.
Well, I think that's really impacted by many of the different departments. So, for example, Health and Human Services, and looking at the trajectory that we've seen already, is that they are coming after everything. I mean, that's kind of like a given. And I'm holding on to hope, and I don't totally agree that we're totally fascist yet. And the reason why I'm holding that is that I am seeing an uprising. And I think the uprising is starting to make impact. Your Republican leadership won't show up at a town hall meeting. That means we're making some progress somewhere, and what will then unfold will be, of course, elections, where all of these people that are rising up and in the streets, they have to make sure that they follow through with, that right that we still have to elect our governance structure, and the folks that we see are not going to take away our rights. And I think that we are as close to fascism as we could possibly get within the United States. I don't see the armored trucks on the corners yet.
No, but we have seen people arrested without charge, being moved around the country, unable to see their lawyers, their writ of habeas corpus suspended without notification, their constitutional rights violated. Seen people literally thrown into unmarked white paneled vans and taken off and taken away to where they cannot be found. Specifically, the student Mr. Khalil, who led the Palestinian protests at Columbia University. I don't happen to agree with everything that Mr. Khalil said either, but he does have a constitutional right to say it. That said,
and he has a constitutional right to not be taken under false pretenses.
without charge.
Right,
without charge. But yeah, I rudely interrupted there. I apologize, but
no, that's okay.
I mean,
that's okay.
I do think I've been asked this a lot, offline, not just on, but offline. What are we going to have elections again? I'm very confident that we will have elections in 2026. I cannot tell you that they will not be, that they'll be clean elections.
Yeah, I don't think the last one was clean even.
Republicans continue to purge voters across the country. Some 4 million plus just since 2020. Those purges continue in Florida and Texas. Not that I have to tell you, you're there. And of course the gerrymandered districts were allowed to be held in North Carolina. As you see, Democrats win statewide elections in North Carolina. But the congressional delegation, God almighty, what is happening to me tonight, is heavily Trump Republican. So I think we'll have elections in 2026. I cannot tell you that they will be free, open, and fair. And I honestly can't tell you whether we will have elections in 2028 or not.
Well, and I think all of your fears are justified, right? But if we do nothing, all those things will definitely happen. And that's why each person needs to become more informed, more active in whatever way they can. Like I said, I'm not asking people to, cover the streets with blazing torches and their pitchforks. But being informed is really important so that, this indoctrination, I will call it, that happened across this country is pushed back on. And we're seeing daily. I mean, I'm having lots of members come on board with us and they're saying, you know what, I was MAGA. What was I thinking? Well, I don't feel sorry for them, like I stated, but we also have to see what's happening. And I hate to say it, but when they do more and more and more outrageous things, it helps our side to fight back. Because when they are outrageous and they do things like take Khalil, it really makes news and it really fires up people. And
for as much news as that made, I still don't think it's as big a story as it should be.
Not yet.
The man has been arrested without charge and held for,
and he's
we're going on a week.
Yeah.
Are we going on a week? No, he was taken. He was taken last week at some point. I'm losing track of the days. And before he was taken to an ICE detention center in New York City, which, if you're not familiar, folks, Columbia University is located actually in Manhattan on the Upper West Side. It is a stunning neighborhood. I've been to the campus. I have been to Columbia's campus more times than I can count. It's stunning. It's absolutely wonderful section of New York. If you've never been there, go look at it. Actually, across the street and up only in a few blocks is Barnard College, which is equally as beautiful. That said, talk about going off on a tangent. Mr. Khalil was taken. He was arrested, taken to an ICE detention center in Manhattan. When his lawyers attempted to meet with him, as is his constitutional right, federal authorities flew him to an ICE detention center in Louisiana. His family and his lawyers, to the best of my knowledge, because I have followed this story now, anytime there's an update, I try to keep up with it. I'm not perfect. I might have missed something. If somebody wants to correct me in the chat, you are beyond welcome to do so. I like to be accurate here. I'm human. Sometimes I get shit wrong. But if you have an update for me, you tell me. But up till this morning, his lawyers had still not seen him. And he has still not been charged with a crime. In fact, the day that he was taken, I'm not going to say arrested. Arrested is a legal process. The man hasn't been through a legal process.
He was kidnapped.
He was essentially kidnapped. He is a political prisoner.
Yep.
When the news media did get a hold of it and went to the Department of Justice to ask about it, the DOJ basically said flat out, we took him because we don't like what he said. Because President Trump doesn't like him. He thinks he's a rabble rouser, so he wanted him apprehended. That's where we are. And again, Liz is a little more optimistic than I am. God bless her. Maybe I'm running out of optimism. History shows us
here's why I
this
think
is where we are.
It's a point of privilege for us to run out of optimism, because we live in a society where people were hung from trees simply because of the color of their skin, and yet the fight continued. This is horrific that he was taken, and hopefully things won't escalate even more across the country. They probably will, but hopefully they won't. But who are we to just say, oh, okay, well, we're fascists now. No, I'm not going down without a fight. No way.
Oh, I expect to, actually, George and I, Randall and I have joked, that we'll be doing the program from a concentration camp before too long, but we'll still try to keep going. So, I
think when we talk about the word hope, though, we have to understand what that means. It's not a Pollyanna approach to functioning, right? People have to have hope so that they continue. Believe me, I experienced this in our network, which is, 25, 30,000 people, something like that. After that election, it was like pulling teeth to get people remotivated and back on board with, yes, we can fight. Because it was such a devastating loss to so many of us. Hey, I was in bed for a week too. I'll admit that, you know.
So were we, yeah.
But we simply cannot give up because, number one, people have not given up in the past. And we've had progress because of them. We stand on some pretty big shoulders and people that have experienced things that most likely none of us are ever going to experience. And the other thing is that if we allow marginalized groups to be attacked, you know, disenfranchised, whatever the attacks are, then we're part of that. Then we are complicit in actions that happen. I'm not saying that every, you know, protest that hits the streets is going to make everything flip and change, but there is a swell happening across this country of people saying, wait a minute. And that to me is something that's very important, and I think that's the hope that we need to share out, that we're not dead yet. And there are things happening. There's an organization called 5051 that is staging protests across the country, and they are having turnouts that are incredible. So looking at that, that's what makes me think that, yeah, we probably really are this huge majority. We just haven't been strategic.
We haven't been loud enough.
We haven't been loud, and we haven't been strategic.
Honestly, I don't think we've been blunt enough. I really don't. I mean, you spoke earlier about the folks that you don't have sympathy for. We've generally referred to them here on the program as the irredeemables. They're simply irredeemable because they don't want to listen. They do not want to learn. They do not want to hear truth. The truth is only whatever Fox tells them that day, or whatever Trump posts on his own social media site. And I can't lose sleep for them anymore. When those Midwest farmers who would vote for Satan if he wore a red hat, while claiming to be Christian, the Confederate states who just, well, he hates who I hate. I know, even admitting at times it's probably not going to be good for me, but he hates black people, and boy, so do I. They're irredeemable. They are the Israelites marching in the desert after. I firmly
believe they are a minority.
Well,
I truly
statistically they are, but they're louder and they're a hell of a lot more well-funded than we. But I continue.
They're being used, right? They're being built up to be, the movement behind.
I believe, they're
MAGA, the movement behind Trump, and it's all based on fear. And they played into people's fear. And, I'm not in either party. The Democrats did not play into fear. They played into our sense of morality. Well, I'm here to tell you, fear works more. And so people need to understand that these things that are happening, they're coming for you.
I think when there are, you're a teacher, when the Hoovervilles start springing up again across the country, when the second Republican Great Depression hits, which we are well on course for, if the recession part of it hasn't already started, we're well on course for it. When the Hoovervilles start, when the veterans are dying and homeless, maybe that'll be what it takes. Never confuse the fact that I believe from a historical, if you can conflate the two terms from a scientifically historical point of view, this is a fascist country now. And it's not to argue with you, it's not to split hairs, this is what history tells me. But never conflate that with the fact that we should just roll over and take it. Not in any way. I have spent a lot of time on this program trying to convince people to get the hell out there and fight peacefully. To use every form of protest that the law and the Constitution allow. And never violence. But to use every tool in the box, so to speak. Marches, signs, protests, phone calls, emails, paper letters, visiting congressional offices, both in D.C. and locally, and Senate offices and state reps, and all of it. But this is ruled by the rich now. This is when it's Mussolini's own definition. The unbridled use of governmental power to further corporate aims. The merger of corporate and state interests. That's where we are now. That doesn't mean...
I won't disagree
doesn't
with you,
mean
Jeff.
that we can't stop it. It doesn't mean that we
Yeah.
can't reverse it. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't stand outside and scream to high heaven against it. But the first every 12-step program will tell you the first step to solving a problem is realizing you have one.
Yeah.
And we do. That said, let me get back to the Department of Education. I happen to think that one of the biggest reasons, even I have listed here in the very few notes, I almost never make notes. I did try to make notes today because I wanted to make sure that I hit all these topics. There are several, I think, very obvious reasons for wanting to destroy the Department of Education, among which tax cuts, I think, are just self-explanatory. I don't think there's a reason to get into that. It's just $300 billion more that billionaires don't have to pay, and that they can have their taxes cut and they can put that $300 billion back in their pocket. We know about the profitization. I think I made a word. The profitization of education. That will make it profitable again. That, if you're a poor black kid from North Philadelphia and you can't afford the XYZ charter school, who can selectively decide who they wish to admit and not, then tough shit. You don't get it, education. Why don't you go with mom to the restaurant and wash dishes and join the labor force?
Yep.
So I do think that's I've mentioned on previous programs how science fiction like dystopian that sounds, but I also think it's a real end game here. Teenagers have again entered the workforce. Arkansas has legalized child labor. If you're 15 years old, you can work in a factory. If you're 16, you can work in a bar serving alcohol. You can work in meat packing plants in Iowa.
That's all making
If you're a
America great
teenager,
again, right?
If you're a teenager, and by the way, because you're a teenager, they don't have to pay you the mandated minimum wage because you're under 18.
Yeah.
All of that said, it would seem to me, please agree or disagree, but as a member of it throughout your career as well, one of the big thrusts for destroying the Department of Education would be to destroy the teachers' unions.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of their strategies, and they've already been successful in lots of places. And I have a very mixed approach to teachers' unions because I think teachers' unions actually need to change quite a bit. But again, that's my same philosophy of you don't throw out everything in order to make change. You get strategic and you look at what works, what doesn't work, and make something better, right? So the teachers' unions should be made better in the United States. Not saying, oh, they're the evil enemy and let's throw them all out and stripping things. I know in Florida they did a huge move where they removed direct deposit for your union dues out of your paychecks. Well, that knocked out a whole lot of teachers from actually being in unions because they just didn't feel like paying on whatever basis, monthly or bi-weekly. And that is definitely attack, and they've been made out to be the enemies. And here's my overall thinking of unions. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them right down to the local area are fantastic. And they are doing things that, are really supportive of teachers. A lot of it has become a big machine. And internally, we need to be able to say, okay, so if this is a big machine, we need to fix some pieces of this machine. Constant improvement should always be our model for anything that has a governance position within our society. And that includes those unions. And, it's just, they put the messaging out and we throw up our hands and say, oh my God, instead of, okay, if that's what they're messaging, then this is what we're going to message instead. And we've been very poor at that, particularly through the last election. They went for, low-income people in a lot of different areas. and they drilled their messaging into them. What did the other side do? We said, oh no, teachers' unions are great. Well, you know what? Those messaging pieces did not resonate with a lot of people. And, you know, there's statement after statement that have built us to this point, and it's been this slow roll of really getting into these people's psyches of, you know, the Trump administration are the saviors. They're coming in to make this country great. And the seed of some people not wanting to have anybody black in their neighborhood or black in their schools or black in their job places, that seed's not ever going to go away. It will get better and better and better and better as we go. I have faith in that. But that's not the people that we're trying to reach, because they are unreachable. If something is that embedded in them, like the lady today that said that, you know, Trump is her savior. Well, I'm not going to spend my time on that lady. I hate to say it. I simply just asked her a question. I don't even know how she responded. I said, so you're willing to get rid of Social Security? We'll see. You know, it might be a little piece that would make her think. I doubt it, but you never know. And so when you look at education as a whole, and in this case, public education, we need to be the ones saying, yes, there are things we need to fix, and not let them destroy the whole industry, let's call it, by putting all of this disinformation out there. We need to say things like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example to drive this point, but reading scores, okay? We need to be messaging that we can't rely on just test scores to determine whether kids are reading at level or not. That's never been totally factual. That's all manufactured. We need to look at where kids are when they come to us and show continuous improvement in things like their reading abilities, their math abilities. We don't measure kids on continuous improvement. We measure them on these, you know, however selected benchmarks that don't fit all kids. And so, you know, the standardized testing industry designed to show failure. The tests themselves are by publishers who publish the remedial materials and sell them then to schools. So, I mean, talk about a conflict of interest. You've got Pearson, one of the largest publishing companies, that they did a heck of a job saying that American public schooling is horrible by their actions. And they have profited greatly by that messaging. But I'm here to tell you, if you look at gaps, you know, when they show all these measurements and things of like the gap between white and learners of color, it looks like, you know, the gap has continued. But if you look at the changes in society, public schools have done pretty good at least maintaining an upward trajectory for all of the things that we are charged with doing. We've done a pretty good job without the proper funding in place, because honestly, funding as a whole needs to be looked at. I get that. I'm willing to do that. But don't cut off funding until we have a better plan in place. So I'm all for improving things, but not the way that it's being done, because it's being done by convincing people that there are bad things out there, that Social Security has all of these fake profiles. Well, I'm here to tell you, one thing that, I mean, that was unbelievable when, you know, Elon is talking about, well, we found, you know, I don't know, X amount of hundreds of thousands of people who had Social Security numbers, and we found out they're dead. Because they stay in the database forever. Those numbers are always in there. So he took this little piece of truth and embellished it like, oh, so Social Security is all a big, what did he call it?
So the numbers,
Ponzi scheme.
So the numbers can't be
scheme.
used again, by the way. Is
Exactly. That's why they're in
so
there.
So the Social Security number can't be recycled and
It
used.
doesn't mean that checks are going out to all those numbers.
Did anybody in the audience ever get someone else's phone number? Did you ever get assigned a phone number that used to be someone else's phone number? And you got
Yes,
there and you
but
got
Social
phone
Security's
calls
not like
from
that.
them.
Mm-hmm.
You got phone calls asking for that person for
Yep.
a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Social Security does exactly that. Well, they
No,
do
they don't
exactly
give away
exactly
numbers.
that in
The
reverse.
opposite. Yeah.
If somebody has a certain social security number and
That's
they
it.
pass away, that number is also, in a manner of speaking, passed away, never to
Yeah.
be used again, for
Yeah.
exactly that reason, to actually to protect and limit from fraud, waste, and
Absolutely.
abuse. The number is dead and buried along with the recipient. Can you?
But he puts
you
up
ma-
stuff like that to justify his actions, right?
Right.
Oh, look at what I found. He found nothing.
Can
And
you?
yet, we're allowing the actions to take place.
You mentioned the outcomes in public schools, the test scoring and the results and so on. Can you talk quickly about the those outcomes compared to the for-profit private education industry? Because I think most people are aware, generally speaking, and there are excellent charter schools out there. There are excellent religious schools out there. There are excellent private, fully private, college campus-like schools out
Sure.
there. Generally, throughout the country, public schools routinely outperform.
Outperform.
Can you talk to your experience about that?
I
About
mean,
how
that's what
these-
we've seen, right? When they do these comparisons of, oh, you need to go to the private sector to be well educated, public schools, in spite of all of the, more recent attacks, but attacks that have been going on for 30 years, in spite of all of that, public schools have performed across this country. And, our hands have been tied over and over again, sometimes by the Department of Education. I'll be honest, sometimes our hands are tied with what we can and can't do. But, I jokingly always say, if you want to really change the country, just ask your kindergarten teachers, because we know how to raise a great society of great citizens. And when you look at doing that comparison, yes, there are great options, right? But on the whole, traditionally, public schools have at least been equal to, if not greater than, any other setting for education. And the difference is that even if you prove that the private setting is better, it's not accessible to every child. So, is that really what we want?
It would seem, sadly, and again, as we had mentioned in the first hour, Trump's first Secretary of Education was Betsy DeVos. She comes from a billionaire family. She's a billionaire in her own right. And she was confirmed to head a department that she had said in public should not exist because her family, shocker, hope you're all sitting down, was in the private education industry. It's how they became billionaires.
Yeah.
It's funny. And it's a circle that can never be squared, folks. I think this is a terribly simple thought because I am a simple individual filled with simple thoughts. But think of it this way. Ask yourself this question. Billionaires don't want to pay taxes. They simply do not.
Right.
Why did they support Reagan? He cut the top marginal tax rate from 74%
Yeah,
to
remember?
25%. He cut capital gains taxes from 35% to 15%. He cut corporate taxes from, I think 50% it was, to 25%. The richest people, there's only so many ways that you can hoard wealth. You either earn more or you keep what you have. You don't spend what you have. Billionaires do not want to pay taxes.
Right.
But they seem damn fine with you paying taxes. Why
Because
does
it's a caste society.
why do the billionaires want to destroy public education? Because it's taxpayer supported. It's $300 billion they can put in their pockets. It's 300, theoretically at least, $300 billion the DeVos family can put in their pockets
Right.
by selling an education,
Correct.
by selling it to you.
Yep. That's the
And if-
whole privatization movement.
Right. And if they can take your money
For profit.
and put it in their pockets, that's fine. If they can charge you some type of exorbitant tuition, great, they'll make money from that. If they can take the tax money that would have gone to public education and stick that in their pockets, they're perfectly happy to do that too. The money's green one way or another. Think about Social Security, folks. Think about this. Social Security is the largest holder of government treasury bonds. By the way, Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. It is paid for.
Right.
Your payroll taxes pay for it. It is a government-run retirement system. You pay
Exactly.
in. When you retire, you get the money back. Part of the way that Social Security is funded is government treasury bills. The United States government has never in its history failed to pay off a government treasury bond. Social Security, I think, I'm working from memory, anybody can correct me, holds roughly $4 trillion in government treasury bonds. When Social Security is shut down, who gets those treasury bonds? Who gets that? Who gets that money? Why, during the George W. Bush administration, did George W. Bush want to privatize Social Security? Because Wall Street wanted to get a hold of the trillions of dollars that you paid into Social Security so they could play with it like monopoly money and bet it and quote unquote invest it, which is nothing more than a formal legalized term of betting. It's okay when you pay taxes. It's perfectly okay when you pay taxes. But not when billionaires pay taxes. They don't want to do that. They don't think they should have to. Taxes are the fees that we pay to live in a civilized society.
Correct.
Period. That's it. It's nothing more complicated than that. We all contribute into a pot to pay for things that we cannot provide for ourselves. Police, fire, roads, airports, water systems, sewer systems, electrical systems, broadband, libraries, schools. This isn't difficult.
No.
It's not difficult. They don't just want to eliminate taxes for themselves, the billionaires. They want your money too. What's theirs is theirs, and what's yours is theirs.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works, folks. I wanted to ask you, I had a thought, and I could be wrong about this. It's really a question that I in my own brain, as a public school educated guy who got 3 years of college before Mr. Reagan said you couldn't have any more money, and didn't finish.
Never too late.
It's too late for me. My time's running out. But believe me, there's way more days behind me than in front. And
You've got a whole lot of education by not being in those classrooms.
yeah, and it's a very comforting thought that there are not many more days left, and that's fine. It's a very comforting thought. I'm tired. It's time to rest. But that said, public schools send how many students into the colleges and universities across this country, both public and private, community, county colleges, all the way up to Ivy League universities. What happens to all those universities when suddenly 90% of the kids in the country don't have a public education anymore? What the hell happens to those universities?
Good question.
And I should suspect that the overwhelming majority of them would simply shut.
Oh, they'll be impacted. They're already feeling it. when you talk about Pell Grants and you're talking about, block grants and things that all of these colleges rely on, they're already feeling, ooh, we're not safe either. And it's more than just the, professors feel like they're having their hands tied with what they can teach, what they can't teach. That's an issue going on too. But financially, the impact is real on just if you change the system that we have overnight, which seems to be what their agenda wants to happen, right? Just eliminate the DOE, eliminate public schooling. Well, what is the fallout of that actually? Higher ed will be one of the fallouts because we've had a system that has been set up to guide and direct students toward furthering their education. So
also as a for-profit industry.
Yeah,
primarily.
And I mean, and
or at least since Reagan. Since Reagan,
higher ed definitely has issues with just whatever. Not everybody can afford whatever those tuitions are at schools, and the kids shouldn't be told that, oh yeah, you can do that. Don't worry about it. That's how
just
a lot
borrow
of kids
it. Just borrow it.
Trapped into
yeah.
All
just
of those
borrow
things,
it. Just borrow
right?
it.
So I mean, the reality is there too. That you're going to have different structures within education, but if you look at K-12 education. I'm not against private education. I'm not against charter schools. I actually was involved in a public charter school at one point in my career. But the thought of moving public dollars into a private setting is what we have to stand against because it really makes us more into that caste society because there are those that don't need those public dollars. They can go to private schools already. And then you have states like Florida that are, giving vouchers to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, even though they're already in those private schools. Oh, well, yeah, here's your big, check from the government, so we'll call it a voucher. And so I don't think that there should be no other choices for education. I think that there should be a lot of choices. But the fundamental platform for education in the country must be our public school system because it has upheld this nation for all of these years and it has its ebbs and flows of support. My real Pollyanna thinking is that after all of these fights, Jeff, that public education has become the shining the top of the mountain for everyone in this country, that they're so proud and educators are put up on pedestals. And I have those dreams, obviously. But until we achieve those dreams, I'm going to fight all these little steps to attack that are taking place. And so, yes, the impact is not just, oh, well, maybe we won't have a DAI program in that school anymore. It's all about undermining the public school system and moving those dollars into the private setting. And we've seen examples. The prison system is not better under privatization. We've seen, where the lack of oversight that isn't applied with a lot of charter schools has created a whole lot of bad situations across the country. Not all of them. I support charters that are good, but I also think that they should have accountability and requirements, just like any school setting. And when you move away from those basic standards of what you expect as a citizen of the United States, that your schools are clean, your schools are well maintained, your schools have great employees that are fully certified, your schools have all the materials that they need. I believe that most people believe that yes, that should happen in this country. And we can't listen to this small group of people that believe, well, we'll just take those public dollars and we'll put them into these more exclusive settings, because they know damn well that the underprivileged child is not going to be part of that setting, and that's part of their motivation for wanting to go in that direction. So I'll make a deal with Americans that want to have choice. I said this kind of facetiously one time, and then I thought, geez, Liz, that's kind of brilliant. if people want to move into a different setting for public school, I'll even give them this leeway. Okay, so we'll give you back what you pay in your local tax that you pay that goes towards schools. Well, I'm here to tell you, I pay a lot in taxes, and I only pay about $3,000 every year into specifically my county's school system. No one can go to a private school for $3,000. So I'll be reasonable. If they want to have some money back that they've paid in, maybe that would be okay with, some parameters to it. But they can't get all of these, per pupil allotments pulled out of systems when they haven't paid that into systems. So it's like, Susie Q has gone to the public school system. They've paid, in our state, it's under $9,000. But and so Susie has been able to benefit from that amount. Now we're just going to take that amount and put it over here in this setting, because the other Susies can't do the same thing.
But let's
that choices for everyone is a definite falsehood.
Let's extrapolate that a little bit. Let's make it because I'm so simple-minded. Let's make it even $10,000. Per pupil spending here in my district or your district is $10,000.
Yep.
Well, Susie, because I'll build on your example. Susie and her parents decide they want to go to XYZ charter school. Because maybe, in all justification, that charter school is more geared to how Susie learns. I spoke on the program last Thursday that I think one of the great failings of the American education system is that we have not learned a lot from Europe. We haven't learned or instituted,
it's funny that you say that, Jeff, because I have to interject. We in this country developed some pretty damn good approaches to education.
Well, we haven't changed
into the early 90s.
We
In
haven't
Finland,
we haven't changed.
Let me finish my statement though. In Finland, the number one system in the world that everyone looks at, they follow a lot of what the US was doing in education. The whole child learning, the integrated pieces of learning, the, teachers having, lots and lots of authority for what's going on. That was all happening in the US. And, we can't say that we don't know how to be better. We tried. And for various reasons, we were shut down.
Well, we haven't. Something as simple as adopting a more European style schedule. We've not done that.
Well, it depends on what schedule you're looking at.
Longer breaks, but going more year-round, starting later in the day, going later in the day, all of which has been proven.
And see, that's a prime example of things that I believe need to be looked at within our public educational setting. Those schools and the pattern of attendance were all set up because of farming. That we needed to have those kids home during the summer months so they could help harvest all the crops.
Right.
It's not rocket science. There's no rhyme or reason to why some of the things are in place that are. Why don't we have shifts in public schools? If we have the workplace that has 3 shifts, let's just say, why don't we do that with our schools? It would help with overcrowding. It would be, better for many, many parents that the kids go to school the same time that the parent goes to work. You know what I mean? So that innovation is being squelched.
I've seen kids in my own development here. I've seen a school bus go through at 6:30 in the morning. I'm not functioning at 6:30 in the morning. I can tell you that. But
that's typically so that they can get there to school on this, whatever.
And they start at 7.
Has been set up.
Right, and then they start at 7.
All of the research says, at least for 12 and overs, that they should be starting later.
Right. I believe most of Western Europe starts somewhere around, I think, 9 to 10 a.m. if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that sounds right.
8:02 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We've entered our final hour of the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 16th of March 2025. We are live right now on the Facebook pages of the TCP Media Group, Our Revolution Pennsylvania, Ghost Claw Productions, and Hot101.net. We're live at our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, and about 100 others. And if you are on one of those, stay and enjoy, please do so. Or you can come over to our home group Facebook page as well. Whatever works for you. We will continue to take your comments and questions in the chat. I will open up the phone line, as long as it doesn't bother Liz. We'll open up the phone line this hour. where am I? Hot101.net, of course, as well as GCPR. Hot101.net music follows us immediately, or returns, I should say. And when we sign off here tonight, Villain's View comes your way on GCPR after we sign off. Conversations with T. Nathan from 11, as well as Thomas tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with the sound of coffee to kick off your broadcast work week. We will take your phone calls a little later in the hour. I want to just finish this thought before I lose it, because I'm an old man and my brain will go away if I don't finish this thought. What I wanted to build on what Liz was saying is the following. Of course, we'll make this simple math because I'm a simple guy. $10,000 for per pupil spending. Let's just say in my district or your district, or Main Street USA district. And Susie and her parents decide to take that $10,000 and go to the XYZ charter school. Very much, folks out there, it would seem to me in my brain, very much like health insurance. The private for-profit education industry has, it's in the name, a profit motive. So where do they make that profit? Well, Susie and her $10,000 enters the charter school. If the charter school, they get the $10,000 no matter what. They get 10 grand. That is, for all intent and purpose, Susie's tuition to that charter school. Now that 10 grand is coming from the public school district. It's coming from your tax dollars. So if they can quote unquote educate, I'm using air quotes, radio land, my favorites, air quotes. I use them way too much. It's so bougie and stupid, but I use them all the time. If they can quote unquote educate Susie for $8,000 or $6,000 or $3,000, where does the money go that they don't spend? It goes in their pockets.
Absolutely.
That's the profit. Why did Luigi Mangione murder the CEO of United Healthcare? And he did. Because 4 out of every $10 he gave United Healthcare, and in some cases 6 and 8 out of every $10, went into someone's pocket. It didn't allow him to see a doctor. It didn't cover his medical needs. It went to stockholders. It went to bank accounts. It went to the CEO, Mark Thompson. For-profit private education is very similar to health insurance in that way, folks. If you needed a new analogy, I don't know that you needed one. You're smart people. We have a very smart audience. You're smart people. But if you needed a new analogy, for-profit private education is very similar to for-profit private health insurance. They make money by not spending it. They make money by not providing the service you're paying them to provide. If your per pupil spending in your particular school district, whatever district it may be, has a 10th, and again I'm using even numbers just for easier math, because I'm not that smart, for easier math, the district is going to spend that $10,000 on Susie. That's the per pupil spending, period. But if Susie and her parents make their decision to move to so-and-so charter school, and Susie and that $10,000 with it, they don't have to. Well, they don't want to spend that 10 grand, because the least amount of that 10 grand that they spend goes in their pocket. That's the profit part.
Right.
This isn't hard. And again, think of the contradiction that's here, folks. Please think of the very odd contradiction. Mr. Musk doesn't want to pay taxes. He just doesn't. He doesn't want to, and he doesn't think he should have to, because he's richer than you are, and he's smarter than you are, or at least thinks he is. I've told you on this program 1,000 times before, he has said in interviews, in public, repeatedly, he doesn't understand why he even pays his own employees. Why don't they want to just work for him? Because after all, he's just trying to make a better world. This isn't Star Trek. We haven't eliminated money as a motive in society yet. We're not there we're not there yet. So he doesn't want to pay taxes. But the money that you pay in taxes, he can't wait to get his hands all over that. Can't you see the contradiction here?
Yeah.
And I want to recommend something to you, to all of you in the audience. And if I can do it without, actually, I can put it in the Facebook chat. I will try to put it in the YouTube chat if I can. You know that when I try to do these things, I stop talking. It's terrible radio. Or maybe it's better radio when I stop talking. Kristen was listening today to a podcast by Sam Cedar. If you don't know who Sam Cedar is, you should. He's incredibly intelligent. It's called 20 Trump Supporters Take on One Progressive. And it's hosted by Sam Cedar, and they're literally in a circle. And they have surrounded him. And they are firing. He brings up topics. They ask him questions. He answers them. And then usually the argument begins. And since we're talking about education, I was going to save this till the end of the program, but I don't want to forget. But since we're talking about education, what I learned, not to use a pun, well, I shouldn't even say learn. What really struck me to my core in listening to this is the profound, deeply profound, flat out ignorance of these 20 Trump supporters. Not a single one of them regurgitated a fact. What they spewed was what they had been told to think. Not anything that they had thought for themselves. I could turn on Laura Ingraham or Sean Hannity or any one of 100 people on the out of the right-wing hate media machine and hear all the same shit. In fact, I could hear most of it word for word.
They've done an excellent job, haven't they?
I deeply encourage all of you to watch this. It is disturbing. It is angering. I think I really bad grammar there. It will anger you. That was really terrible grammar. Anger, speaking of education, how about some grammar, Jeff? It helps. It will anger you. In fact, I tend to think it will infuriate or enrage you. It will sadden you. These are young people, by the way. They are not Jim Bob from North Central Mississippi. These are college students of every race, color, and creed, spewing and attacking and trying. The main thrust of their argument is, if I just keep talking and I don't take a breath and I talk louder than Sam, I must be right. Except, no, you're not. Because nothing you've said is true. And the saddest part of it is that you've done nothing to learn anything true. I've told you on this program 1,000 times. You want to have a conversation about taxes? Let's talk about it. I don't like to pay more taxes than I owe. I don't have the money. The two of us in this household are over 6 figures. I'm not going to tell you what we make because it's none of your fracking business what we make.
Right.
But we're in 6 figures. Not you, Liz, specifically. You know what I mean? Everybody out there. It's none of your business. And I don't need to know what you make. It's none of my business. But I can tell you we're over 6 figures, the two of us put together. And it still takes 100% of what we bring in to survive. I have to pay taxes. It's part of living in a civilized society. I don't want to pay more than I owe. I can't afford it. But simply because I'm not a billionaire doesn't mean I get to pay all the burden either. Jefferson and Madison themselves, Hamilton talked about a progressive tax system.
Yep.
The very founders of the country, the framers of the Constitution themselves, the top marginal tax rate under Dwight Eisenhower was 91% in today's dollars. If you earned over $4.4 million a year, that 4.4 and first dollar was taxed at 94%. And we had the greatest peacetime expansion in the history of the planet. Top marginal tax rate under Kennedy was 74%. He lowered it. And within months realized he'd made a mistake and planned to raise it back. And oh, lo and behold, he was assassinated. And if that sounds conspiracy theoretical to you, it is. There's many reasons why President Kennedy was assassinated. That was one of them. He wanted to raise taxes again back to where they were. They were still 74% during Nixon's administration. This isn't difficult when you really think about it and break it down. It's all about money.
Yeah.
We've talked about the privatization of Social Security during this show, of education, of healthcare. Trump 2.0 want to cut taxes $4.5 trillion more than the 2017 tax cut. And he wants to make the 2017 tax cut permanent for the richest people and the biggest corporations, not for everybody else. Musk is supposedly in charge of cutting government spending. But somehow in this continuing resolution that AIPAC-owned Chuck Schumer voted for, they somehow found $6 billion more dollars for the Defense Department. Bernie Sanders will tell you that the actual real spending at defense, real dollars, not just the direct contractors, but the subcontractors of the contractors, is about $1.5 trillion. Fully half of which is privatized. Almost 60% of Medicare recipients are now on Medicare Advantage, which is private health insurance paid for by your tax dollars. Do you see what's happening here? When we talk about fascism, that's what it looks like. The merger of corporate and state interests. Private health insurance companies could never sell you Medicare Advantage on their own. Because it simply is not better than Medicare. Administrative overhead at Medicare is about 4%. 4 pennies out of every dollar. Private health insurance is as high as 60%. 60 cents of every dollar. They'd never be able to sell it to you because you're not that stupid. But they wiggled their way in to get your tax dollars to pay for it. And all these wonderful gym memberships and free dietitians and all. That's lovely until you try to use it. I get a free teeth cleaning every year. Okay. What the frack happens to you when you have a heart attack? Oh wait, you went to an emergency room. We didn't clear that first. We're not paying for any of that. Yes, but I was having a heart attack. My heart stopped. Yeah, but we didn't approve that. And by the way, increasingly, artificial intelligence are making those decisions about what gets covered for you and what doesn't, and what you're eligible for and what you're not.
And Jeff, all of this is really that big picture that we need to stay focused on and keep informing people about. This is all about class warfare, and it's the caste system that we currently have on steroids. And so chipping away at the structures that are in place, like education across this country, is their strategy. And we have to keep informing people about what's actually happening. And with that, Jeff, I'm going to have to sign off, I think, for this evening.
Go get them. Yeah. You're always beyond kind with your time. And as I always remind you, and I'm very kind and very humbled enough that Liz and I have developed somewhat of a friendship offline as well. You know you're always welcome here. You should.
Thank you.
I don't think you need me to tell you that by this point, but you are always, always, always welcome here. I hope you will come back and see us again.
I will.
As we continue.
So keep fighting, folks. Have some hope and keep fighting.
Yeah, I hope you're doing the empty chair town halls down there by you, and we're having one up here in Ryan McKenzie's district soon, and we're you have Democratic officials across the country. Bernie has already spoke to hundreds of thousands of people. Is it 10, 20, 30,000 people sometimes where he shows up, and he's doing what Republican officials have been ordered by their leadership not to do.
Not to go.
So anyway, thank you very much
for
being here
Jeff.
again. Please come back and see us.
I will.
That's
Thanks.
Liz Mikitarian, head of the national group Stop Moms for Liberty. And I completely forgot to ask about the damn moms. I don't know what they're up to, but we're out of time. So
well, they actually have these structures in place of these horrible governance people. So they're not as busy as they used to be because they've gotten their way on lots of different levels. So I'll just leave it at that.
That's like the anti-abortion movement. Yeah, the dog caught the car.
Exactly. So the fight continues. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you. Look, we'll open up the phone line since you're stuck with just me now. The real expert out there is gone. You're stuck with me now for the rest of the program, or at least for as long as I can take you. Let me again remind you that we're live on all the different Facebook places that we're usually on. We are on Ghost Claw Productions Radio, the audio going around the globe. A very special hello, by the way, to the GCPR listeners who are outside the United States. And if you're on Facebook, or if you're on YouTube, wherever you're listening, and you're outside the United States, if you should have the opportunity to just drop in the chat where you're from, it would be really neat to know. At GCPR, we do study the analytics, as I know that DJ Lex and DJ Earl do it at Hot 101, and I find it very exciting when somebody from outside the country takes in the program, whether they do it live or they do it on a recording. I find that very exciting. I think it's super, super, super cool when it happens. and the analytics at GCPR shows us that I can't say that I'm privy to the analytics at 101, but I do know that Global 101 is global. They have significant listenership. God almighty, I've been speaking wrong the whole night. They have significant listenership in Australia, throughout Southeast Asia, across the African continent, dotted a bit on the Western European continent, but strong again in Central and South America. GCPR has measurable listenership throughout Western Europe, and some Eastern European countries, which I think is cool. If you happen to be, any time that you're listening to us, that you have access to any of the chats, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, wherever it is that you might be taking us in, or send a message to the websites for the radio stations, plural, 101 and GCPR. If you're outside the States, I'd love to know where. I'm so uncomfortable in this chair. God, I hate this chair. I'd be so curious to know where you're listening from. If you ever can remember to do such a thing, that'd be awesome. I'm just kind of very curious where everybody is, for whatever that's worth. Let me get into and again, well, I guess we kind of touched on it a little bit, but one of the reasons I continue to think that the Department of Education is going to be shuttered is child labor. When kids can no longer access an education because they can't afford it, what's going to happen to them? They're going to go back to, we'll be back in the 1850s where they enter the labor force, where they work in sweatshops and whatever else that they have to do, whether it's washing dishes at the same diner that mom is working at for her second or third job, or, I don't know, or deliver, they're the ones that run the mailroom at the office that mom works at for her primary job. They're going to go back into the workforce. It's going to destroy unions. It's going to drive down pay rates, labor rate across the country. And I think that's all part of this too. I really do. Arkansas, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders did not push through legislation to legalize child labor again there by accident. She did it because it's profitable. And the people that own her wanted it. Come on, I'm clicking on it, damn it.
No, just keep talking, it's fine, I'll listen.
I'm clicking on the freaking thing. I'm clicking on it. Nothing's happening.
What do you mean nothing's happening? I don't know.
Jeez. No, I'm clicking on the answer button to answer you, and nothing's free. It just keeps ringing. Go ahead. Take it over.
No, I don't want to take it over. I was listening to you.
You always take it over. That's your job, damn it. That's what you're here for.
Jeff, I love you, brother. You know that. I've been following you since, gosh, we're in March. So we're going into year 6. Correct?
I am already into year 6 of the Kennedy effect, calendar year 6. I am hoping to be healthy enough to return.
I know.
Let's not get into that. I'm going to do that next week. I know I told you offline. I don't want to get into it quite yet.
That's all private between me and you, and thank you for sharing that private with me.
I am hoping to be well enough to celebrate the our 6th anniversary with you all live on the air. I do not know that I will be. Because the 17th of April falls on a Thursday. Well, yeah, we would be on the air on Thursday. Maybe we'll celebrate then. But I am hopeful that I will be well enough to do that with you. It's going to be tight, but hopefully. Yeah, 6 years. It'll be 6 years. Yes, sir. You're right. It'll be 6 years.
We've been friends for 6 years. We've both been progressive Democrats. Well, in my case, I started going there in high school in the late 80s, protesting against the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
Look, here in media, my county media, in front of the courthouse and down in Washington, D.C. at moratoriums when I was 17. And yeah, it's been a real, as the Grateful Dead said, what a wild trip this has been. And here we are at the wildest friggin' trip in our lifetimes. My 72-year-old lifetime and your 50s lifetime. And, you know, we both know what we're staring at here. We both know what's happening here in our country. And I can just talk, but, you know, my 3 daughters, 2 of my son-in-laws, we're all with you, Jeff. My lone son-in-law, yeah, he's into that survivalist shit.
Well, so you know, we're well on our way. History shows it. We're well on our way to a second Republican Great Depression. He may not be wrong, because he might be able to feed his family when the rest of us can't. So
he's not. And my sister, my next young sister, she has been a survivalist for 30 years.
Yeah,
lives in the hot desert in Arizona. 3 acres of vegetables. Shoot deer and elk and everything and put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
Solar power with a big battery bunker.
He might not be wrong. I mean, I you know, a second depression is going to actually force, I think, a lot of people to become. It's not necessary that we go down this road. It's not.
No.
It is not necessary that we go down this road, but we're on our way. And I think that'd be very hard to dispute. History shows that. That said, a second Republican Great Depression would force, I think, a societal reset in a lot of different ways. That kind of exactly what your son-in-law, where you just talked about, that backyards become gardens. Well, hell, front yards become gardens. Well, you begin to grow some of the food that you need instead of being able to purchase it because you won't be able to afford to purchase it.
The latest we bought was 27 acres way outside of Richmond, Virginia. And, yeah.
Yeah, but even folks in more suburban and urban areas who might only have a house on 1/10 of an acre, that backyard could yield an awful lot of food. Yep. And I think, you know, again, we're well on our way. All the historical markers are there. We're watching a repeat of 1929. That we're headed toward a second Republican Great Depression, and I think it will be a reset for a lot of people. It will be a reintroduction to a barter system of, you know, I don't have physical cash, but I know how to do this skill. You need that skill. You have something that I need. We'll trade each other. I will trade you my skill for the good or service that you have. My backyard is now going to be a farm. We're going to grow what we need out there. Right here in the Lehigh Valley, we've seen multiple municipalities where the people themselves, not the lawmakers, or not the township councils and town councils and city councils and mayors, but people themselves have gone to those township, town and city councils and said, hey, you have an ordinance here that we're not allowed to keep chickens in our backyards, or maybe we can only keep 1 or 2. We want that changed. We'd like to keep 6 because bad shit's coming and we'd like to be prepared. And there's nothing wrong with that. He might end up being the one who's a hell of a lot more prescient than the rest of us. And, you know, I'm in a condo complex. I have suggested to our HOA multiple years now, why don't we happen to have like an empty field over on the one end of the property, and grow and grow in it.
Make community garden.
Community
Exactly.
garden. Very simple. The problem has been, of course, there's no water over there. We don't know how to get water over there. But I should say it's not a simple problem because there's literally no piping. We'd have to string together like 100 hoses off of somebody's house or something. But my point is that we have discussed this as a community to say, well, you know what? Maybe we need to look into that of a community garden, a good use of the land. It's actually good. Actually, growing crops is good for the land if you grow the right crops and you rotate them. And the seniors in our community could benefit because they're on tight budgets, they're on fixed incomes. You know, and I don't know if I'll bring it up again this year, but I might. But yeah, I mean, he might be the one that's right. He might be the one that's ahead of the curve on all of us, if you think about it. I mean, when you think about the deeply reduced value of American money through inflation, the market increase in prices and the lack, how wages have failed to keep up with that because corporations won't pay. A second Republican Great Depression could be literally devastating to the population of this country. People will die. They will starve. They will die because they can't afford to see a doctor. People will die. And that's not hyperbole. I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's not it's not science fiction dystopia. It's just the truth. We already know there was largely no homeless population in this country before Ronald Reagan. And now we're talking about firing 80,000 employees from the Veterans Administration. When veterans have to choose between food and medical care the way so many other Americans do, the Trump administration wants to get rid of they did it by executive order, although the original price controls on pharmaceuticals were an act of Congress. So that act of Congress would have to be overturned. But when insulin is no longer $35 a month and goes back to $200, $300, $400, $500, $600, $800,000 a month, and people are deciding, well, I'll take one insulin shot a week so I can eat because I can't afford the insulin. You're talking about mass death here. You're talking.
Yes.
You know, so we might sneer. And I know there's been TV programs about these preppers in the middle of Montana, you know, who build guns.
They can't.
Yeah, they don't.
They absolutely off everybody they can. They want to kill off. You know, Hitler's Nazi Germany.
Well,
the first group took to the camps was the disabled, whether it was a child with polio,
yes,
or whether somebody that was diabetic that was older. That was the first group they took to the camps. That was the first group that they tried to mass exterminate using carbon monoxide out of the tailpipe of trucks.
Yeah, they started
it was too slow to kill them.
They started with bullets, but it was expensive. Then they needed the bullets on the front line. Then they moved to carbon monoxide. But you're right, the first groups that were taken away to the camps were the old, the infirmed, the disabled, especially the mentally disabled, or the developmentally, I think a more proper term nowadays is the developmentally disabled. And then not oddly, so I shouldn't say that, that's the wrong way to put it. Randall, you'll remember this, but one of the first ethnic groups to be taken were the gypsies.
Yes.
And we don't call them gypsies anymore, but they did call them that back then. I think they're more referred to nowadays as nomads or just folks who tend to travel. They don't do permanent residences. They kind of travel. They just move about. And they were the first groups taken. And yeah, look, I don't know I don't know. Trump has talked about camps before. We've talked about this on the program. You and I have talked about this in the program. He's talked about camps. He's used the terms detention camps, prison camp, work camp, labor camp, and yes, folks, he did utter the words concentration camps. And some of his most ardent followers, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world, have talked about filling those camps with all the people that were the targets in the Holocaust, including anybody who's a registered Democrat. So if you're a member of the Democratic Party, you deserve to be locked up in a camp, according to some of the folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene. So do I think that's going to happen? No. But just the fact that there's a significant group that wishes it would happen should be frightening. Now we saw Trump's bizarre, just random stream of consciousness in his speech at the Department of Justice, talking about how the department was going to go after his enemies. He was going to use those people to go after his enemies. I've used the example of Mr. Khalil on this program, the graduate student from Columbia who was just abducted by federal authorities and continues to be held without criminal charge, and has still not been able to see his family or his lawyers, and his family and lawyers have no idea where he is. Supposedly, the media has reported he's in an ICE facility in Louisiana. Nobody's 100% sure of that, because his family can't find him, his lawyers can't find him. He didn't get his one phone call. When he said, "I'm not going to answer your questions until I speak to my lawyer," that's it. I mean, all of these are. I hate using that analogy, Jeff. Don't use that analogy. These are canary in the coal mines. These are. You know, it's a slower. I don't want to use the frog in the water. I freaking hate that. It's so disgusting. But you know, we're getting these things in drips and drabs now, but they'll become more frequent. There's nothing to stop it. And you know, making Khalil the first target in a sad way, Randall, makes sense, because people he led the protests against Israel. Well, then most people throw up in their hands and say, okay, good, they got him.
Hey,
he's still being held without charge. It's still unconstitutional.
He protested as an anti-war person against the tens of thousands of civilians that were being killed in Palestine. And he is an anti-war activist, as I have been my whole life.
And we've talked about this 1,000 times on this show before. Bernie Sanders himself, a Jewish man, a practicing Jewish man, that being protesting against the Israeli government, against Netanyahu, is not anti-Semitic.
No.
Those two things are not the same. They're not the same thing. The same. Sorry, I'm getting the hiccups here for some reason. They're not the same thing. It is not anti-Semitic to say Israel is bombing civilians and should not be doing that. That's not anti-Semitic. It just isn't. But somebody put a gigantic thing in the chat. What is that then? Did you do that? No. What the hell put that in there? Somebody put oh, you did do that. Oh, no, Mike did it. Oh, okay, Mike. Oh, my God. Did you quote Jeremy Clarkson? That's hilarious. I happen to be a big fan of Jeremy Clarkson. I'm not a fan of his politics, but I'll watch anything he does on TV. I love Clarkson. I miss Top Gear. I miss the Grand Tour. Anyway, we don't have too much time left, and I talked over you an awful lot. So if you got one big point, go ahead and go for it.
The one big point is, unlike Mike, that said before.
Be nice.
I am being nice. Unlike Mike said before, Trump was sworn into office on January 20th. He said, "You, Jeff, and I, we're paranoid of what's going to happen."
Yeah.
Well, the bottom line is everything we talked about prior to him being sworn in as president is not only happening. We both said Project 2025 is real and it's going to happen. And I just don't understand how some people still don't believe what is going on and happening to our country to turn into a billionaire oligarchy feudal system. I just don't understand why they don't understand reality that's happening. Go ahead.
Well, it's the old Santayana, and I think I'm saying it right. Quote that those who do not know the past are condemned to repeat it. I mean, we're staring at. I've also talked in the program an awful lot about this. This 80-year historical cycle that the United States seems to have been in, of starting with the revolution, really prior to the revolution, this cycle of very progressive, and I don't necessarily mean progressive in the modern sense, but the way we tend to use it now, but progressive in the sense of completely people-oriented, low taxes, pro-small business, pro-farmer, expanding voting, expanding democracy, expanding opportunities. Back to before the United States was a nation. We had an economic crash. We had the Revolutionary War against what was a fascist monarchy in England. Terribly progressive. After that war, set up a new constitution, rapidly expanded quote-unquote democracy and freedom throughout the country. Unless you were black, then you got none of that. Worked up toward, moved into that 80-year schedule or 80-year cycle where the economy became more and more controlled by the rich, more austerity, less spending, lower taxes for rich people, more control by big business. The Confederacy was a fascist government. Bang, economic calamity. Bang, Civil War. Terribly progressive. After that, Reconstruction, massive expansion of democracy and freedom, progressive economic policies into the early 20th century. Second Gilded Age, right? Massive tax cuts on rich people. Again, deregulation of Wall Street. Wealth terribly concentrated in the hands of just a few people. Economic calamity. Boom, the first Republican Great Depression, followed by a world war. After the war, massive progressive expansion, democracy, most expansive, widely expansive economic expansion in the history of the planet. Certainly still not a haven for people of color, but they began to enjoy some of the benefits in generations that had not. Expansion of educational opportunities. And I'm not here to tell you that it was equal if you were a person of color. It was not. It was not. It still is not. But constant improvement as we go through these 80-year cycles. And where are we now from the end of World War II? 80 years. Economic calamity, a massive concentration of wealth within the hands of a very few, a terrible attack on any small d democratic institution, millions of people having their voting rights taken away, a reinstitution of segregation through the country, destroying education, We're on the doorstep of a second Republican Great Depression. Trump launched airstrikes yesterday. You have war in Ukraine. You have Western Europe arming itself at a breakneck pace to try to defend itself from Russia. Taiwan and Japan arming, and Australia, by the way, and New Zealand, arming themselves as quickly as they can to protect themselves from China. We're at the end of another 80-year cycle. I hope that we can end this that we can break this cycle, really is the way I should put it, by not having the second Republican Great Depression and not having yet another world war. But I just don't have that kind of confidence. I just don't. We're at the end of another 80-year cycle. Here comes the economic calamity. Here comes the world war. And who's left after that?
Well, World War IV has been said way long ago. Will be person to person with their hands. In other words, we'll be barbarians. The whole planet will be barbarians. Gone back thousands of years to having no science, having no civilization. But in any case, I just want to say one thing, Jeff.
Mm.
And that's what you just talked about. Trump, number one, Trump has gone to this archaic, I think it was 1787?
Yes.
Law that was for war.
Yes.
Against the British.
Yes.
And,
it was an anticipated war against the French. I actually posted this in the group. Go ahead and talk. I'm going to see if I can find the article really quick because I posted an explanation of it.
He's using this to deport people from this country.
He's trying.
That he is trying.
Yeah, he's trying. Yes. Yes. You're right.
Anyway,
he's trying.
Anyway, he's trying. But in any case, that's just like the anti-abortionists of the Trump party, going back to the Commonwealth Act in the 19th century. That you can't.
There it is.
You can't send abortion pills to the mail.
I found it. Saturday, Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act.
Bingo.
For the first time since World War II, granting himself sweeping powers. Let's think about that, by the way. He invoked an act. He used his power to invoke an act to give himself more power.
Japanese Americans to concentration camps. To take Japanese Americans to concentration camps.
The act is a sweeping wartime authority that allows non-citizens to be deported without being given the opportunity to go before an immigration or federal court judge. But then, of course, a judge immediately struck that down because we're not in a state of war. Let me real quick. What do we got? About 5 minutes left here. 1798, with the U.S. preparing for what it believed. 1798 now. For what the U.S. prepared for what it believed would be war with France. Congress passed a series of laws that increased the federal government's reach. Worried that immigrants could sympathize with the French, the Alien Enemies Act was created to give the president wide powers to imprison and deport non-citizens in time of war. And this is where the federal judges have already struck this down from Trump not being able to use it because we are not in a time of war. But would anybody put it past this guy to start one just so he could use it? But yeah, we only got a few minutes left.
Well,
please,
he's already started the war against Yemen. So we're on the
Yeah, but Biden did the
possible.
same thing. President Biden had ordered strikes on the Houthis in Yemen as well.
Well, yeah, because they were attacking
Shipping.
ships.
Yeah. Again,
seas. I understand that, Jeff.
Again,
That's
it's
not
the
point.
American taxpayer and the military being used to protect private interests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole point. The only thing the billionaire class wants to the federal government to fund is the Defense Department to protect their worldwide assets. And everything else they want done away with to get a tax decrease. And all the billionaires want to protect themselves by the Department of Defense is that us,
Yeah.
below the 98%, will pay for the Defense Department to protect them,
Right.
their interests worldwide, and other than that, hey, let's give trillions and trillions of dollars tax cuts to the assholes. All right, I'm gonna let you go because you only got like 6 minutes.
Yeah, I'll get done before that. Pre-show's already going for the Villains View, so we can turn
Yeah, I
this
know
over
it is.
to them.
I know, and
so-
I'll jump over at 9 o'clock when
Yeah.
you're done.
but
But in any case,
all right, you, as always, listen to me this time because I know you don't listen to me. You take care of yourself, right? Watch your health. Take care of yourself. Take care of the family. They need you.
yeah, I've got more medical appointments coming up and reappointments coming up
Yep.
for all the stuff that's showing up.
Listen,
But
I
that's
think
what happens when you get old past
Yeah.
70.
you're doing it. You're doing it smart. Use the Medicare while you have it. Use
That's
it till they take it
exactly
from
what
you.
I've been doing. That's
Yeah.
exactly what my wife started me doing in December to try and get everything done before they do away with my Medicare.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, get it in while
And you, my brother,
Well,
you,
we'll
my
do-
brother,
we'll cross
I'm
that
praying for you every day for
Yeah,
your health
well.
and your problems.
Well,
And
we'll see.
God bless you.
Thank
And
you.
God bless Christine.
I'll take it.
All right. Good
I'll
night.
take it. I'll take all I can get, my friend. All right, let's. We only have a few minutes left, so we're gonna wrap up here. The pre-show of the Villains View is already underway. On the all the video outlets here for GCPR. So let me again remind you that when we sign off here at hot101.net, I'm trying to do two things at once and it's just not working. I'm not that smart. I'm not that dexterous. Would that be the right word? When you're ambidextrous, you can use. I guess my dexterity is not that good. Grammar. Again, I had a teacher on. I botched up all my grammar, made up words. It wasn't pretty, and I had a teacher on this program. Not a good showing of myself. But my dexterity isn't great enough that I can do these two things. I'm trying to monitor things here, and I'm trying to talk to you. But anyway, so we only have a few minutes left. Let me just say, following us, Hot 101, the music returns. Pre-show for the Villains View is already underway. They join you full throttle at 9 p.m. Conversations with T. Nathan from 11. And Thomas kicks off your work week tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. All those times are Eastern Daylight Times. Please check out the websites for both stations, hot101.net and gcpr.live. GCPR, you can read about all the different shows, see the schedule, listen there for free. 101 as well, you can listen there for free as well. Here at TKE Tonight in the Kennedy Effect, we will be with you. We plan. I always say we plan because I never know what's going to happen. I'm actually going to see my tax accountant on Tuesday night, but I should be home in time. We plan to be with you from 8 p.m., 8 to 9 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday. That's here for us. Both stations will be going 24/7. We return to you live again Tuesday night from 8, Thursday night from 8, and then my last show with you for a while. I will explain why. Oh, there's a big stink bug in this room. Ugh. God, it's creeping me out. Oh, dude, that's creeping me out. God, I hate bugs. Ugh, they make me gross. They make me, it's creepy. And it's the crunchy ones, too. If I crunch them in a towel, it's gonna, God, it's gonna feel like breaking glass. We will be back with you Tuesday, Thursday, and next Sunday is my last program as host of this for a while. I will explain that to you next Sunday. Our expected scheduled guests next Sunday, 2 of the hosts right here at GCPR, Pastor Gia Clinton, Pastor Matthew Best, and a returning friend of the program, Pastor Kevin Frederick, will be our guests, scheduled guests next week. I'm already working on more. I'd like to find a rabbi and an imam to be part of that as well, so I'm working on that still. So for everyone at hot101.net, that's DJ Lex, DJ Earl, and the entire hot101.net family, we'll see you again on Tuesday from 8 p.m. The music resumes right now. For everyone at gcpr.live, Thomas, Gambit, Gilbert, Transgretchen, Solid Blue Sister, everybody that I may be, Jessica, the Hurricane Girls, everybody that I might be forgetting, I'm so sorry. For you all, The Villain's View begins right now. And for all of you on our video streaming services, thank you for being with us yet again. We've done about all the damage we can do for one night. For everybody here at the Kennedy Effect and TKE tonight, that's Lynn and George and Kristen and Daisy the dog. And of course, April Riddick. We'll see. I keep getting hiccups for some reason. We'll see you again on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. The Villain's View starts right now. Please.